People were happily surrounding and chatting with a little girl who happened to be passing their way. They would ask if she was waiting for anyone or compliment her beauty. As the little girl ran towards Ji-hoon and hugged him happily with her tiny body, all he knew was that all of his unexplainable changes happened the moment his daughter magically appeared in front of him. His one and only lovable daughter, Kim Chae-rin. The next day, a child's voice rings through the air, asking for their father to wake up. Ji-hoon covers his face with his sheets, wondering if he was still dreaming. Chae-rin heard from Mom that whoever slept in was a bad child, and the little girl had said that he was a sleepyhead, calling him dad in the process, which jolted the man awake. He questioned who was calling him a father until he noticed the silver-haired little girl with the butterfly necklace sitting in front of him. Ji-hoon remembered that he had suddenly gotten a daughter the previous day, as he realized that it wasn't all a dream. It was a daughter he needed to look after. But how did this all happen? It was never something that he could have predicted even a little. Days before this, Ji-hoon believed that his best choice of actions was to quit his job as the assistant of one of the teachers. All he thought about each day was getting a decent job and earning money. The phone rang for him while he drank his coffee, his mother answering and asking if he needed any food, to which Ji-hoon would reassure her that he was already eating well. She started to transition into a topic that Ji-hoon felt as though he was already past, and started to yell at her about how he needed his master's in order to become a specialist and that he wouldn't be hired otherwise. People around the cafe listened in silence at the man's pits of frustration as he slammed his hands down on the table, before storming out of the building and ending the call, telling his mother to stop stressing him out. While he walked down the street, Ji-hoon felt as though he wasn't being heard by the people in his life. The school's expensive fees had already made him use all of his parents' money, leading him to take a gap semester in order to pay off the tuition. He took a part-time job and graduated with his undergraduate degree after 6 years. However, Ji-hoon was still not done after that. For his degree, his professor told him about needing a master's degree, which meant him staying in school more than he wanted. This then led to him being told that he needed to do his PhD in order to teach. Ji-hoon wanted all this stress and exhaustion to end so he could make money to decrease his worries even a little. He stopped in place once he realized what he had done and called his mother back, apologizing for his words and thanked her for always worrying about him. All that Ji-hoon wanted was just to live a happy life, yet that seemed like an impossible dream. The man had decided to change his day around by having fun with an old friend of his that night. The next morning, Ji-hoon had awoken from his slumber with a hangover from the previous night, until he heard a knocking on his front door. He thought it was someone trying to sell him something and tried to go back to sleep, but the knocking persisted. Ji-hoon had finally gotten out of bed as his anger levels rose to their maximum, causing him to burst open the door with such rage until he realized the small child outside of the room. In such a short amount of time, his anger had dropped to 0 as he was weak to things that were cute. Ji-hoon kneeled to greet the child and asked her what was wrong, ready to call in to report about a lost child to the police. However, the girl had called him dad once more, causing him to drop his phone in shock. He thought, oh, maybe he just looked like her father, but the girl insisted that he really was her father, and that her mother was Bae-yina. Hearing that name had made Ji-hoon remember the girl he used to know from 7 years ago. After a trip and a night they had intimately shared, she had suddenly disappeared, confusing the man even more. The little girl had picked up Ji-hoon's phone as she remembered that she needed to call her mother back when she arrived. When her mother was on the phone, the little girl had passed the phone on to Ji-hoon as he grabbed it with hesitation. He greeted the person on the other side before the familiar voice of the girl he knew before had rung through the phone. Ji-hoon was shaken up before asking her about the child who arrived, wondering if it was a joke. Yina told him that it was true no matter how much he would want to deny it. And Ji-hoon wanted to know why she had disappeared, but Yina didn't feel like it was the right time to explain. She did explain that the situation that made her leave had caused her to leave Chae-rin in Ji-hoon's care and that she already took care of all the legal issues. Quickly bidding her goodbye, she hung up before Ji-hoon could say anything else. He felt anger and confusion flow through him, wanting to curse so much that moment, but he had to hold it in around the child. He brought the little girl into his apartment as the girl shone brightly from her happiness of walking into her dad's house for the first time. The exhausted man sighed as he thought that having a sudden daughter would already make his tough life harder. But little did Ji-hoon know that this meeting would change his entire life. Ji-hoon looked through his cupboards for anything that he could feed a kid but was unsuccessful in his search and decided that he needed to go to the grocery store, grabbing his jacket. Chae-rin wanted to come with until Ji-hoon remembered how cold it was outside, asking if she had any other clothes. But the little girl told him that she didn't get cold. Ji-hoon still felt concerned about her and went to pick her up into his arms and zipped her into his jacket. She immediately started to snuggle into the warmth, explaining that she was only accepting it because she liked his warmth rather than actually needing it. He enjoyed the moment as well, until it was interrupted by people around the mall criticizing him for the situation that Chae-in was in, but complimenting her for her beauty. Ji-hoon ran away from the publicity to try and find a clothing store before he attracted even more attention. Once the man had finally found a store to buy from, he received the receipt, only to stare in disappointment at how expensive children clothes were these days. Chae-in, on the other hand, was excited at the fact that she would have clothes from her father for the first time. She noticed his expression and asked if he was hurt anywhere, but Ji-hoon reassured her that she was just misunderstanding. They finally arrived at the grocery store, which caused the man to realize that he had never once properly cooked a meal for himself. Ji-hoon asked the girl if she liked cereal, but her lack of preference made him relieved. Suddenly, he felt his stomach twist, and he told Chae-in to wait for him while he went to the bathroom. He ran past the other shoppers as the girl started to wait for him, until her demeanor suddenly changed into a colder tone. People around noticed her, and wondered why she was alone, until a stranger kneeled near her and asked if she was lost. She bluntly told the man that her parent was in the bathroom, but he kept insisting that he should help her, until Chae-in snapped and told the man that it was none of his business. Shoppers in the vicinity felt a shudder run down their spine as they felt black lightning appear behind the child. Ji-hoon had finally come back and apologized for taking so long, his presence causing the child to change back into her excited self, asking him if his stomach hurt anymore. She put her hands on his stomach and chanted, seemingly trying to make Ji-hoon's pain go away. Through a supposed miracle, Ji-hoon's stomach did feel better. However, the moment was cut short, as people had started to gossip around him, not believing that Ji-hoon was the father of Chae-in. He was offended at the fact that they felt so open to gossiping around him, but knew that it was true that him and Chae-in didn't look anything alike, and he wondered if she really was his child. After a long day, the two were finally home, and Ji-hoon contemplated getting a paternity test. He didn't want to spend so much money on the test, but felt as though it would be a worthy expense to prevent garnering attention. Ji-hoon had made the plan for the next day to send over the needed materials and be slightly late to his class. The man looked over and saw the sleeping child laying gracefully on the couch. Yina had said that she was their kid, but he didn't see one feature that took after him, believing that he would know for sure once he got the DNA test done the next day. The morning soon came and Ji-hoon's plan went into action. However, when he finally had gotten the results back, he didn't realize the doctor would tell him that he and Chae-in were indeed blood-related. The man in front of Ji-hoon had a bright smile, while Ji-hoon himself was in shock at the news, but it was true. Chae-in was really his daughter. After the day went by, he started to walk home and wondered if he was truly fit to take care of a kid, especially with his job and school life. He sighed as the worries had started to pile on him until he walked through his door and his daughter ran at him to hug him happily. He asked if she did well by herself, to which she told him about her enjoyment with the TV. Ji-hoon let the girl know that sitting close to the TV would worsen her eyes, but the girl reassured him about her eyesight. He felt as though his mood was better now that Chae-in was in his life, telling the girl that he would wash up so they could watch TV together. While brushing his teeth, Ji-hoon decided that he needed to get his life together in order to take care of the girl, and knew that with the current situation, he should give up on his PhD and look for an actual job, knowing that he didn't really like his professor anyway. Chae-in burst into the bathroom wanting to brush her teeth with her father and asked the man to give her toothpaste, to which Ji-hoon followed with no hesitation. As they brushed their teeth together, Ji-hoon asked the girl if she was bored while he was gone, and Chae-in admitted that she wanted to spend time with Ji-hoon instead. However, she was okay with enduring it, as she felt it was important to him. He asked where she lived when she was with Yina, but her only response was that she lived very, very far from where they were now. He wondered if it was immigration or maybe something even more complex. But he knew that he needed to keep his thoughts held back, as he would find out slowly while living with the girl. Night came and Ji-hoon allowed the small girl to sleep in the same bed as him for the night, causing her to feel happy. She asked him if he liked the fact that she came over to stay with him for a while, to which Ji-hoon affirmed that he did. Hearing those words, Chae-in suddenly got up in joy and wanted to give the man a massage. She started to give him one and he already felt at ease. Getting a massage right after a hot bath caused the man to sleep almost immediately, and Chae-in smiled at the sight. She held her hands out and started to chant, wanting her father to be cool and to be healthy. Magic appeared in the air and entered the man's body, causing the girl to feel accomplished, as she decided it was her turn to sleep as well. When the next day arrived, he started to stretch his body only to realize his soreness was gone. Ji-hoon went to go make breakfast and still couldn't find a problem in his neck, confusing him. After the cereal was made, Chae-in wanted a hug from the man, asking if he felt refreshed after her massage. He thanked the girl for her accomplishments and told her that they were ready to eat breakfast until someone had suddenly called them. He read that his mom was calling and felt a spark of fear surge through him, as he knew that he would have to admit about grandchildren. As the ringing of the phone continued, Ji-hoon wondered if he should take the call. He hoped that he would be able to take the call and pretend that nothing had happened, but his mother had immediately noticed the change in his voice. She asked if he was eating well, to which he assured her that he was until she brought up a topic about him getting a job again. But Ji-hoon was ready for it this time, letting her know that he was already looking for one and had given up on his PhD. This led to a long conversation, but once it ended, Ji-hoon sighed in relief, knowing that the secret was safe for now. He would introduce Chae-in to them next week, worried how they would react. The little girl hugged him when she noticed his worried expression, and Ji-hoon tried to reassure her only for the girl to huff and tell him that she would get rid of all of his worries. They continued their breakfast, and Ji-hoon realized how seeing Chae-in smile somehow made all of his worries disappear in that moment. When he went to the lab that day, Ji-hoon's friend asked him where the dark circles under his eyes went, but Ji-hoon didn't have an answer for that himself. He didn't really think anything of the lack of neck pain. But things seemed to get even weirder from the things he noticed throughout the day, wondering how Chae-in's massage could have caused it. Chang-soo let the man know that the professor was looking for him, which confused Ji-hoon until he felt worried after knowing that the professor was not in a good mood. He carefully walked into the classroom until the teacher threw a pile of papers into Ji-hoon's face in anger. The professor asked him if he was trying to write a poem instead of being detailed and accurate. Ji-hoon apologized until the teacher noticed the boy's change in appearance, asking if he slept well after his supposedly bad writing. As the professor continued to throw insults at Ji-hoon, he tightened his fist in anger and in silence, knowing that the same man in front of him told him that his writing was decent the previous day. After the professor was done ranting, he asked Ji-hoon if he decided on his doctorate process, to which Ji-hoon claimed that he didn't decide yet. The professor suggested to get into technical research and excuse the boy. Once he walked out, Chang-soo asked if Ji-hoon was okay and assured him that the professor would do things like that all the time. Ji-hoon thanked the man and they split their ways and walked to their cubicles to start working. He looked at his phone and wondered if he should just make a big fight and quit his job after all, until he noticed the picture that Chae-in took of both of them after she had stolen his phone temporarily. This cute photo had drastically improved Ji-hoon's emotions and caused him to believe that he should just hold on to the job for half a year before quitting. Ji-hoon would just play dead until then and try with all his might to not do anything to get nitpicked for by his professor. He got prepared to start working, thinking that many people before him had done this job well, so why wouldn't he be able to? And after a long day, he sighed. He had finally finished all the work for the day and was looking forward to leaving the building and going to take care of Chae-in. He asked a lady near him, Yirim, if she knew where the professor is, but she snapped at him and told him that she didn't know. Ji-hoon apologized as he watched her walk away, wondering if she was under a lot of stress recently since she seemed more on edge than usual. However, Ji-hoon was not far off at all. Yirim walked out of the room and down the hall in silence until she jumped at the sound of the professor's voice ringing behind her. She threw her head around to notice him creeping behind her, asking her where she was going in such a hurry. He reminded her with a sickly sweet smile to stop by his office before leaving at the end of the day. But the girl knew his intentions and stayed silent, staring at him with disdain. Ji-hoon had finally gotten home and was met with the affection of his daughter, Chae-in, who said she missed him the whole time. He asked the girl if she ate dinner, and Chae-in told him about eating heated up rice. He was about to praise her until he realized the scene on the table and started to panic that she would start getting malnourished if she kept eating the way she was. Knowing that he needed some help, he decided that he would let his parents know about Chae-in sooner than he wanted to and go to them the next day. The next day, he was on the phone with his professor as the man had started to yell at the boy for the fact that he might be late again, this time due to family problems. Ji-hoon apologized and tried to reassure him that he would take care of the situation as soon as possible, ending the call and sighing in exhaustion. Chae-in asked Ji-hoon who the man was and why he was yelling at him, to which he explained to the girl that he just made a mistake to a man whose job it was to teach him. Continuing to make his way to his parents' house, he wondered how he would explain the situation and wondered if they would kick him out. Little did Ji-hoon know that Chae-in was still in thought about Ji-hoon's professor, a threatening aura forming around the small girl. The two of them had finally arrived in Ji-hoon's parents' house, and Chae-in greeted her grandparents and introduced herself. Ji-hoon explained that Chae-in was indeed their granddaughter, which meant that she was his own daughter. They were in disbelief that their son could ever have a daughter, but Ji-hoon was just as surprised as they were, cause he only found out about having a daughter days before when Yina called. They recognized the name as the girl he had dated back in high school, to which Ji-hoon had nodded, thinking that the pregnancy may have happened back when they had gone on a trip together. His father wondered if Yina raised Chaedon all alone until now, and Ji-hoon confirmed that as well, as that is what Yina said, causing the old man to start yelling at Ji-hoon, criticizing him for not coming to them with Yina as well. Ji-hoon tried to explain that Yina had her own issues and pulled out the paternity test, hoping that it would stop the anger. Luckily, his parents had stood in shock as they stared at the paper, and Ji-hoon's father asked his wife to get Chaedon something to eat, wanting some alone time to talk with his son. He ordered Ji-hoon to come with him, as his mother brought Chaedon over to get some snacks. After the two men were alone, his father asked him what he intended to do, not about Chaedon, but rather about Yina. Ji-hoon explained that she wouldn't pick up at all, so his father asked if the reason he came here on the weekend was because of Chaedon. He felt ashamed, but admitted that he couldn't take care of Chaedon while he was at the lab and could barely feed her properly, feeling upset at the situation. After a period of silence, his father agreed to help take care of Chaedon and suggested that Ji-hoon should try and make connections with Yina soon, as it was best for parents to raise the children together. Ji-hoon was surprised at the situation, but his dad was doing it all for Chaedon. But still, the boy thanked his father. The boy was relieved at the fact that his parents truly acknowledged Chaedon as their granddaughter. Ji-hoon promptly went to leave for work once more and told Chaedon that if she listened to her grandparents, the two of them could go somewhere fun for the weekend. She was happy at the thought and made him pinky promise, to which Ji-hoon did without hesitation. She waved goodbye and Ji-hoon was off to work again, his footsteps feeling light, unlike other days. His biggest worry was resolved and Chaedon was officially part of the family, wondering and looking forward to what place to take her for the weekend. While Ji-hoon was working, the professor had suddenly asked Ji-hoon if he wanted to go hiking on the weekend, as part of the New Year's party. Ji-hoon was about to explain that he already had plans that day, but seeing the face of his professor had caused him to lie and say that he could go. The professor was happy at the answer and asked Yerim and Chang-soo if they could also go, but they didn't respond, making the professor take it as a yes before promptly leaving the room. All the employees in the room had started to sigh in frustration and talk negatively about the professor while he was gone, everyone having already had their own plans for the weekend. Ji-hoon sighed as he watched this situation unfold in front of him, knowing that everyone was mad at Professor Chang as always, but were never willing to directly resist him. This teacher held everyone's future careers in his hand, so no one felt as though they could do anything against him or reject his desires. Once Ji-hoon had come home from work, he apologized to his daughter for having to break his promise, assuring her that they would go the next week for real. Suddenly, the girl asked for a hug, causing Ji-hoon to ask if she was upset. She said that she, herself, was okay, but noticed that he didn't look like he wanted to go on the trip. Ji-hoon had tried to comfort the girl, saying that it was an opportunity for exercise. Chaedon asked if the man who was making him go hiking was the same man who called him that morning, to which Ji-hoon confirmed. Ji-hoon explained that it was a celebration for a project that was recently finished. The little girl hugged her father again and told him to come back safely, and Ji-hoon thanked the girl for worrying about him. However, Chaedon had a rage in her eyes. As the night arrived, Ji-hoon took a shower and felt ready to go to bed, noticing that his daughter was seemingly already asleep. He assumed that she was tired after riding on the bus and subway for more than an hour that day, slightly disappointed that they couldn't talk before bed. He got into bed and quickly went to sleep in seconds, wanting to look into preschool for Chaedon the next day. After Ji-hoon had fell asleep, Chaedon had poked out of the sheets and noticed her father already asleep. She immediately held out her hands and started chanting for her dad to have a deep and comfortable sleep. Happy to see him smile in his sleep, her expression quickly darkened as she was ready to scold his professor. The little girl held out her hands once more and started to read through her father's memories in order to learn more about the professor. His name was Chung Don-ho and was a man who was cunning with a mask of kindness. Chaedon remembered her mother telling her that if she met a hypocrite who harassed others, she should scold them, while making sure to not interfere with the cause and effect and make the person be swallowed up by their own sins. The girl started to float into the air as she used her magic to find the location of Chung Dong-ho. Once she found him, she told her sleeping father that she would be back after teaching this man a lesson. Chaedon had quickly disappeared and reappeared into the professor's room and used her power to see what sins he had committed, wondering which of them should bear fruit. Despite it having to be a bit of trouble, she had chosen it for her father. She was going to let it fester and would come back to check on the man later, knowing that her mom told her to do that as well when something like that happened. She had finally appeared back into the room and laid beside her father, knowing that her father would be surprised once he found out, and would tell him that it was a surprise gift once he did. Telling the man goodnight, she had fallen into dreamland as well. The next day, Ji-hoon had gotten himself ready for the hike, and Chaedon gave him a small kiss, telling him to be careful before she was set down on the ground to be watched over by her grandparents. He told her once again to make sure to listen to her grandparents while he was gone, so the two of them could play a lot the next day. Jihoon's parents complimented the girl for her responsibility, which made Jihoon feel better. His parents had also told him to be careful as the Winter Mountain was said to be dangerous, and Jihoon was on his way there. This was not the weekend he was hoping for, one of a graduate student being tied to a professor. After all the employees had dragged themselves to the hiking area, the professor laughed and told his students to feel the air and show off their supposed unity, but no one was excited for the hike. Chang-soo had claimed that he was already starting to feel exhausted from the supposedly tough hike, but Jihoon had believed that he was just being dramatic. His friend had asked if he was tired, but Jihoon felt fine, causing Chang-soo to ask if the man was working out without him recently. He was suspicious over how well in appearance and health that Jihoon had gotten so quickly, and interrogated him in order to try and figure it out. Jihoon remembered how his body used to hurt everywhere when he woke up, and now, things were different with Chaedin there. His mood had elevated, and he started to wonder if his daughter was eating well, while his friend had felt betrayed, knowing that Jihoon was hiding something after all the smiling he was doing. Jihoon asked Chang-soo what had happened to him compared to the previous years, and told the man to work out while he was still young. Before he could say any more to his friend, the two men had heard their professor's voice ask Yerim if she was tired and to take her time. Chang-soo asked Jihoon if he noticed Yerim's expressions being a lot darker recently, wondering if she had any trouble with the professor since last year's end-of-year party. Jihoon started to recall her coldness since the day, and Chang-soo noticed how it was weird that the professor did not scold her for her unexcused absences, and would yell at anybody else to not worry about it if they asked. Jihoon had shushed his friend once more, and Chang-soo joked that he would just put the blame on Jihoon if their professor had heard them, causing Jihoon to start chasing his friend in anger. Once the group had finished their hike, they all went to a restaurant for a toast. Yerim was still acting cold, and the drunken professor noticed and asked her why she was being the way she was, telling her to drink and have fun. Yerim thought about how disgusting this man was and wanted to throw up at the sight of him, reluctantly agreeing with him. She asked him if he remembered his promise, to which he asked which one she was talking about, causing the girl to glare at him until he tried to reassure her that he was joking. He grabbed her arm and told her that he would look into a spot for her to study abroad and make her a professor when she came back, trying to look charming toward her, but that only made her feel worse as she started to shake in disgust. She ordered him to keep that promise or else she would do something, and he asked if that was a threat. But Yerim realized her choice of words and tried to take it back, knowing that she has to hold in her true feelings in order to gain the future that she wanted. However, she wondered why that day of all days was one that she couldn't keep her emotions in check as well as she had been, seemingly as if she were under a spell. The professor spoke and said he would keep his promise as long as Yerim was honest with him. The girl suddenly turned with a sickly sweet smile and agreed. Not too far from the table, up on the balcony, was Chaedin, using her magic on Yerim and the professor. She knew what she was doing might be painful in the moment, but it would all be better in the end. After the weekend hike, everyone had went back to work, and Chang-soo told Jihoon that the professor was called to the prosecutor's office, surprising him greatly. He asked how something like that happened, and Chang-soo explained that after the hike, the professor had forcibly touched Yerim, which crossed professional lines. Jihoon was surprised at the situation, hoping that Yerim was okay. Chang-soo had wondered what they were supposed to do next about reporting the conclusion of the project, but Jihoon had believed that the report was basically gone at this point. Even if their professor didn't contribute to the research, he was still the one who received the project, meaning that without him, all of his work would be going downhill. A coworker had walked up to Jihoon and told him that the dean was asking for him, but no one could give him an answer as to why. Once he walked in, the dean asked if he had heard about Professor Chang, to which he confirmed. The dean asked about their ongoing project and ordered Jihoon to have him and the others finish it up and report the project, surprising Jihoon. He was a senior in the lab, which is why the dean had wanted him to take responsibility after his professor and finish it up. Jihoon felt horrified at the man's apparent lack of knowledge of the situation and tried to tell him about how hard it would be to do. But Jihoon was cut off by the dean, who said that he contacted Hatch for him and that he wouldn't need to stress. After relaying the information to his other coworkers, everyone was surprised at how easy the situation had become. Chang-soo assumed that the dean was being this nice and wanted the project under his belt in order to be chosen for chancellor, as the elections for those were soon. Everyone else thought about it before quickly agreeing with the thought, meaning that all Jihoon had to do was just explain it well. Chang-soo seemingly didn't have full faith in Jihoon and told him to make sure to take his medicine before the presentation, causing Jihoon to slap his friend and walk off with the other workers to go finish the project. It was due the next day, but Jihoon was confident that the group could do it. Jihoon had went to go pick up his daughter and asked about her day, to which she admitted all the fun she had. He apologized for his lateness, but Chaedin said she understood. Jihoon explained that he was going to a place called Hatch to present the work he had been doing, wanting his daughter to cheer for him so he could do well. She smiled brightly and agreed to do so, the two walking home so they could go to bed. Once Jihoon was asleep, Chaerin stayed up once more and wondered what spell to use on the man. The girl had an epiphany and brought out jars of different positive qualities, wondering which to use on her father in order to help him. She combined the liquids of the jars of knowledge, confidence, and charm to her concoction. She accidentally poured a little too much charm into it, and she wondered if it was going to be okay. There was nothing she could do to take back from it and decided that there wouldn't be any bad consequences, promptly making the creation enter her father. Chaerin sighed in accomplishment and wished her father good luck. The next day, Jihoon was trying to pick something out to wear for the Hatch meeting, but he decided to try on something new and asked his daughter if it looked okay on him. Without hesitation, she complimented her father on his clothing, as the man had felt weird about how he felt so confident that day when he was filled with such worry the previous day. Bidding his goodbyes to his daughter, he went off to the meeting feeling like he could do anything. Jihoon had finally arrived at the building but felt incredibly nervous. He didn't take his medicine as Changsu told him to, but he quickly calmed himself down and focused on just trying to explain the project well. He remembered his daughter's cheers and immediately felt more confident about the situation. A woman had told Jihoon that the boss would be there shortly to personally meet him, letting him have time to prepare. Jihoon had passed a USB drive to the woman and asked her to print the materials in it, lying that he was well prepared as she had wondered if he was really okay. Jihoon had felt as though he was doomed when he heard that the boss of the place was arriving for it. A person Jihoon recognized, Supervisor Yang, walked in and sweat dropped at Jihoon coming in at a bad time, making the boy worry even more before Yang sat down. More people started to pour into the room, and the boss of the place had ordered Jihoon to start the presentation, making the boy feel as though he would get kicked out even after stuttering a little. Despite all that, Jihoon threw away his anxiety and started the presentation smoothly. After it had concluded, the room was quiet, which made him think that he messed up, not remembering what he'd even said during it. The boss had asked for a name, confusing Jihoon, but he wasn't asking the name of the project, he was asking the name of Jihoon himself. Jihoon gave his name before the boss started to ask many questions about the project. Once Jihoon started to answer them, the boss started to smile, which he had taken as a good thing. The man had quickly cut off Jihoon and said that he heard enough, bidding his other workers goodbye. Jihoon had felt his life fall apart when the boss had left so quickly. His thoughts of grief were cut off by Yang catching his attention and reassuring him that the boss had likely taken the presentation well. Jihoon still had doubts, but the mood of the remaining people in the room seemed decent, but he had no clue on how to read people's reactions. People at the table started to argue about the company's internal finances and secrets, to which Jihoon wondered if he should really be there during that. The man who started the conversation brought Jihoon into the topic, asking for his thoughts, before quickly apologizing as he remembered that he wasn't one of their employees. The people in the room had compared the boy to their past experiences of giving their first presentations, relieving Jihoon that other employees had seemed to like him. Yang was told to escort Jihoon out, and the man sighed in relief at the sign of escape as Yang had started to compliment Jihoon for his skill of communicating the topic. Yang had admitted that the project was dumped, which stabbed Jihoon's confidence in doing well. But Yang reassured him once again that it was fine, and was only because they had dragged company work to a school. He asked Jihoon what his plans were to study abroad, to which Jihoon responded that he had none at the moment. Suddenly, Yang asked Jihoon if he wanted to come to the company. Before Jihoon had a chance to misunderstand, Yang explained that the boss had a reason for liking Jihoon, and told the boy to consider the company when he would be looking for a professional job. Jihoon thanked Yang for liking him and went on his way, ready just to get back home to his daughter. The boy had felt as though the day was weird for him. He felt as though everything was going wrong, yet it all went wildly right, wondering if someone cast a spell on him. Jihoon laughed in disbelief at the thought of magic existing in the world. And suddenly, Jihoon received a notification, picking up his phone only to widen his eyes in shock. Jihoon was surprised to find out that Yina had deposited money into his bank account, wondering if it was the child support that she had mentioned the previous time they talked. The boy was planning to go home with takeout, but quickly decided that it was enough to go out to eat and live it up. He had suddenly brought his parents and Chaerin out to a fancy restaurant. Jihoon's parents wondered if this action was because something bad had happened at school, and if Jihoon would really be able to afford it. But he reassured them that he got out early due to the project's completion and that he had just gotten money. He explained that the money was from Yina, which his parents understood without question. Quickly switching to Chaerin to ask her who taught her to cut steak so well, to which she explained that it was her mom who taught her. Jihoon's mom laughed, knowing that she was so well behaved compared to how Jihoon was as a child. where he supposedly was breaking plates when he was younger, as his mom wondered how they were so different. Ji-hoon's sweat dropped, saying that his daughter likely took after Yina, as he felt sad that Chae-rin seemingly didn't take after him in any way. Despite that, she was still his daughter, which made him happy. The boy thanked his parents for looking after her for the past few days, and decided that it was unlikely that they would need to anymore, causing them to ask if something happened. He explained the situation with Professor Chang and how there was no benefit in staying there without a professor, reassuring them that he wasn't going for his doctorate degree anymore anyway, and that he would just finish up his master's and go into technical research. Both of his parents had trusted that their son would be able to do well no matter what decision he made, as Ji-hoon knew that he needed to live responsibly now that Chae-rin was in his life. Once him and Chae-rin had started to walk home, he asked the little girl how it was staying with her grandparents, to which she said that it was fun, as his mom had made her many delicious meals and snacks. Ji-hoon asked her if it was more fun staying with them instead of him, but Chae-rin felt happiest with her father in the end. These words made Ji-hoon ecstatic as he picked up the small girl and said the same back to her. Suddenly, the girl grabbed at Ji-hoon's glasses and asked if they were uncomfortable at all, which he agreed that they kind of were. She asked why he wore them, and he explained that he needed them to study. He was proud of his daughter worrying about him so much, and they continued to walk home together. The winter air was cold, like every other year, but it felt a little warmer to him now, thanks to Chae-rin. Meanwhile, as the days went by, the investigation on Professor Chang had progressed even more since Yerim had collected evidence, causing the student council to go into action and leading to there being no more classes taught by Professor Chang. Thanks to that, Chae-rin and Ji-hoon were taking a fun little break together. The little girl asked her father if they were finally going to go to an amusement park the next day, and Ji-hoon confirmed it. He was ready to spend the day doing a lot of fun things with his daughter that day, as the weather was also supposed to be good. That was until Ji-hoon's happy expression had left his face, as he realized that the weather had suddenly changed in the blink of an eye. He stared outside the windows of his apartment and asked in frustration why it was pouring rain in the middle of winter, especially when the forecast said it would be sunny. Chae-rin asked him what they would do if it rained the next day, as the man checked his phone, wondering when the forecast changed so quickly and worrying that they wouldn't be able to do anything with the weather like this. His daughter had reassured him that it would be fine and they just needed to pray for it to get better, the girl putting her hands together and urging her dad to do the same. Ji-hoon thought that the action was cute, but didn't believe that it would work, as if it did work, he would have won the lottery hundreds of times. Chae-rin noticed that he wasn't praying and grabbed his hands to put them together and told him to follow her actions, starting to chant for the rain to not come the next day. After a bit of hesitation, Ji-hoon had started to chant alongside his daughter. He wondered if it would really work, as he didn't want his daughter to be disappointed. Yet, through some kind of miracle the next day, Chae-rin excitedly woke up her father before the alarm had even rung in order to try and show him something. She told him to hurry and led him to the window with the snowy skies shining brightly outside the glass. The girl asked her father how it was and if it was good enough for them to enjoy since it wasn't rain. Ji-hoon stared in astonishment, as it was as if their praying had really worked. He still tried to find a scientific explanation for it as Ji-hoon glanced at his happy daughter, feeling as though things have been going a little too well lately. But he dismissed the thoughts and believed it didn't matter. Ji-hoon told the girl to wash up and get ready to go out before more traffic would occur due to the snow. Ji-hoon already knew that he would have lots of fun with his daughter that day. As they arrived at the amusement park, Chae-rin stared in excitement at every ride in the area. Ji-hoon asked if she liked it, to which she agreed, and the two wondered where they should go first. He noticed the little girl's face, staring happily in a direction, and it was because of that that he knew where they had to go first. He picked out a hat for his daughter to wear and felt a stab of cuteness through his heart as she said that the hat was warm to her. Ji-hoon complimented the girl's hat until she wanted him to pick one out for himself as well. He was hesitant at the idea, not believing that it would look good on him, but after simply looking at Chae-rin's face, he gave in and put on a simple headband, to which Chae-rin enjoyed. A couple had walked by and noticed the two, calling them cute for their father-daughter moment. Those words had made Ji-hoon happy to hear after only hearing about the fact that the two didn't look alike before. He took Chae-rin's hand and told her that they were going to go around wearing these for the day, exciting the girl at the idea. As they walked through the falling snow, he wanted the girl to let him know whenever she wanted to do something. The man started to look at the pamphlet and remembered the children's rides at a certain part of the park, but Chae-rin had already had her eyes on something, asking her father if she could ride one of the fast roller coasters of the park. But Ji-hoon said that she was too young to ride it. She then pointed to a different fast roller coaster, to which Ji-hoon shut that idea down as well. The girl explained that she wanted to ride something that went really high up, and Ji-hoon knew a place to bring her: a Ferris wheel. As they slowly went up into the air, Chae-rin stared in amazement at the fact that she could see the whole park from there. She continued to stare while Ji-hoon took a picture of his daughter in order to keep the moment forever. as he didn't know when he would have a time like this again with her. Throughout the day, the girl had met rabbits, ate churros, saw performances, met one of the mascots at the park, and went on a merry-go-round. And finally, at the end of the day, Ji-hoon had taken the girl to go take in the sight of the large Christmas tree in the center of the park. Those were the last of the pictures he had taken that day, and saw that it was getting dark. When he glanced over to her, he realized that she was suddenly gone. After violently throwing his head around, he saw her in the distance and saw her around the families who had their mothers with them, making the boy wonder if she missed her mother. Chae-in turned to her father and grabbed his hand happily, chanting for him to become warm. She asked if he was warm now, and as if a miracle had happened again, Ji-hoon felt his body and mind become warm like Chae-in wanted. Now that they were both ready to leave, Chae-in told her father about all the fun she had and wanted to come back to that park someday in the future. He was glad she had fun and pushed his doubts aside, knowing that he accomplished what he wanted, and that was making his daughter have fun. He pinky promised the girl that they would come back in the future, but this time with her mother. Once they were home, the two laid in bed beside each other as Ji-hoon looked through all of the pictures of the day. The girl found one of the pictures he was swiping by and said that it was her favorite. It was the one where Ji-hoon was holding Chae-in in his arms as the two smiled together. She liked it the most because it was with him, which elevated Ji-hoon's mood as he said that they should take a lot more pictures together from now on. Ji-hoon was grateful for the day as his daughter had fun, hoping that she will continue to grow like she was. The next day, Chae-in had happily woken up Ji-hoon early once again, causing him to begrudgingly get up and politely ask her how she wasn't tired. He was confused but impressed at the sight of his child having a completely different sleep schedule than a normal child. The girl asked him what he was thinking about, to which Ji-hoon lied and said that it was about how pretty his daughter was. This caused her to jump on him in a hug and tease him to tell her more. He called her the prettiest in the world, and she returned the feeling by calling him the one she liked most in the whole world. After the exchange, Ji-hoon had grabbed his glasses and told Chae-in to wait while he made breakfast. However, he had somehow bumped his head into something in the kitchen which caused him to be confused. He realized that his eyes were out of focus and he wondered if they had gotten worse. Chae-in asked if he was okay, and he reassured her and said that he was just not watching himself well. Ji-hoon took off his glasses and knew that he should go to an eye doctor after breakfast. Once he went to the eye specialist, the man at the desk said that Ji-hoon's eyes had gotten remarkably better. The man at the counter asked if he had done anything to his eyes, but Ji-hoon didn't know what he could have done for them to have gotten better, to which the doctor suggested for Ji-hoon to go to a hospital immediately in case it might be an eye disease. Ji-hoon's sweat dropped before affirming that he would, as he wondered if there was a problem with his eyes. After visiting the hospital, the doctors there had also told him that his eyesight had improved, saying that it was -3 diopters instead of -4 like the last person told him. Ji-hoon was shocked at the change in such a short amount of time, as the doctor assumed that it was just his nearsightedness naturally adjusting quickly, telling him that he was just a rare case of this miracle. He got new glasses for himself and went home, starting to scroll through the internet about his situation but failing to find any info about it. He decided to dismiss his thoughts and stop laying in bed as if it was his break. Ji-hoon asked the girl if she wanted to go look at books, and she exclaimed happily. They arrived at the library and Ji-hoon told the girl that he would buy whatever book she wanted to pick out. As she walked off, he wondered what kind of books Chae-in would like. She had already chosen one and showed it to her father, only for him to widen his eyes in shock at the fact that it was an elementary math textbook. He was in disbelief and asked for her confirmation, to which the girl felt strong in her decision, feeling that it would be fun to learn math, despite having no experience in it. He was worried that it would be a waste of money and made Chae-in pinky promise to read it until the end. They found other books together to buy as Ji-hoon felt that it would be financially okay since it was the one book that she chose. Once they had gone home, Ji-hoon felt disappointed at all the money he spent on books that day as Chae-in ran in with excitement to start reading the math book. He told the girl to go ahead and start her reading as he went to make lunch. Ji-hoon didn't understand what was fun in the book as most kids hated math and believed that Chae-in would likely quit it soon. He had finished preparing food and the girl walked up to him to show him all the work that she had done in the book, causing him to stare in shock and amazement. He took the book from her and looked through them to find any mistakes, but there weren't any. She had solved every problem despite having never been to elementary school yet, and Ji-hoon wondered if Yina taught her previously. He asked the girl if that was the case, but Chae-in said that it was her first time, impressing the man even more while the girl just simply thought it was fun. Ji-hoon watched the girl dance around happily as he wondered if she had a talent for math and asked her if she wanted to learn more after dinner, wanting to teach the girl, which made her really happy at the thought. The two continued their lesson as Chae-in flew through all of the problems Ji-hoon threw at her, meaning that she had mastered addition and subtraction at that point. Ji-hoon had made his daughter repeat the multiplication table after him and they went down the entire table smoothly. After they were done, he asked if she could memorize it and she affirmed. He was in disbelief that she could have done it that quickly and was about to make her go through it another time before she jumped up happily, saying that she could do it. He spoke out in astonishment and disbelief at his daughter being really that smart, which offended the girl. He tried to reassure her that he believed in her, but the girl knew his true thoughts and grabbed his face to force it into a smile, and to show him that he would have that expression if he did believe her. Chaden huffed at the scene, before her father started to throw random problems from the multiplication table at her, to which she answered all of them easily. He was still shocked and asked her once again if Yina taught her, but Chaden felt sad that her father still didn't believe her. He tried to comfort her and compliment her for her skill, but she didn't believe him and called him a liar, dramatically covering herself in a blanket to reflect. Jihoon was sweating while he tried to beg for forgiveness from his daughter, to which she said that she would as long as he never doubted her again. He promised and the two hugged, although Chaden almost reluctantly. He wondered if this was normal for kids Chaden's age to learn multiplication and theorized that his daughter could possibly be a genius. He decided to enroll her in school and teach her math up until the first semester began. The girl happily answered more problems with ease, already passed most of elementary math in 1 month. Jihoon pondered if this rate could lead the girl to win the Fields Medal as the youngest contestant, wondering where she had gotten the genes of intellect from. After learning of Chaden's extraordinary mind, he gained one more worry in his life, and that was how he would teach her. He felt lost without Yina there to consider it, but Yina hadn't picked up one of his calls ever since Chaden came into his life. Jihoon needed to find a way to contact her as the new year approached and decided to plan to discuss it with his parents. They arrived at Jihoon's parents' house and the couple greeted Chaden with joy, impressed that Jihoon had gotten there so quickly with the traffic. The family had all gotten into the car and Chaden excitedly told her grandma that she was learning math from Jihoon, surprising the woman at her earliness. Jihoon jumped into the conversation to tell his mother how impressed he was with her smarts, as she had learned all of elementary school math in 3 weeks. Jihoon's dad was also in disbelief, causing the girl to feel offended once more. He told his father about his worries for it, but the man wondered why it was something to worry about, to which Jihoon explained what ideas he should do in regards to Chaden's education. However, his dad was no help at all, since he had no experience raising a genius, jabbing Jihoon's self-confidence. His mother suggested for them to think it over slowly, but this still didn't calm the man down, as he wondered how he could reach Yina to discuss this. The family had brought Jihoon and Chaden to more of the family as an introduction to the little girl, and she was surrounded by excited smiles as she introduced herself. Jihoon's cousin half-jokingly asked him if Chaden was really his kid, to which he felt almost offended at the sudden question, especially since it was the first thing out of her mouth. Another relative asked him if he was still not able to reach Yina, and if he thought about contacting detectives to look for her whereabouts, assuming that her lack of presence was likely due to a family problem and could use help. Jihoon told the man that he would think about it before quickly making his leave, telling the others in the room to not concern themselves. He wondered if he was really being ignorant like his relative said and started to believe that he could be right. Chaden popped outside to ask him what he was doing. He was confused before she happily hugged him and told him that she was there to make him warm. He worryingly asked the girl if she missed her mother, and she admitted that she did, confirming Jihoon's suspicions. Jihoon planned to somehow try and find Yina when he got home, until his thoughts were interrupted by his phone ringing. Picking it up to realize that, lo and behold, Yina was calling. He answered, and it was indeed her, causing the man to angrily ask her why she was unreachable the entire time. Chaden was worried by his anger, and Jihoon toned it down for her, asking Yina where she was, to which she continued to refuse to disclose. He asked if she was running away from debt, but the girl said that she wasn't, as she had sent child support the entire time. His next question was if Yina had missed Chaden, and this caused her to be silent for a moment before affirming that she not only missed Chaden, but she missed Jihoon as well, telling him that she loved them both. After hearing that, one question in his mind became clear. The reason he took in Chaden without question was because of the feelings he still had for Yina all those years ago. He was upset with her for disappearing so suddenly, but he felt angry that she would tell him she loved him after being gone for 7 years. He sighed before asking one more question, feeling ashamed about the topic before asking Yina to confirm that she didn't abandon Chaden because of another guy. This question was immediately met with anger as the woman started to talk his ear off, feeling offended by the mere thought of herself cheating and threatened him to never ask her something like that again. The final thing that she told him was a reminder that she loved him and Chaden, and asked him if he could just trust her and wait for her. Jihoon wanted to ask Yina one more thing, and that was when she could explain to him the entire situation, but she wasn't sure herself, and just told him again to trust her and wait for her. He asked her to promise him, and she promised. He then started to tell Yina about Chaden's intelligence and wondered if he should put the girl into gifted education, to which Yina responded that he should follow whatever Chaden wants to do. otherwise it would never work out. She explained that the little girl was stubborn, but Chae-in feigned ignorance about the situation. Ji-hoon asked her what he was to do when he would be out of the house all day if he got hired for a professional job, until he was cut off by Yina, saying that they would send more money in order for him to hire a tutor. This casual solution being made angered Ji-hoon and made him yell at her, not caring about her situation. Chae-in felt scared and started to shake from the scene as her father told Yina that he would raise the girl on his own, so she could explain herself to Chae-in later. Before Yina could say anything else, Ji-hoon hung up the call and wondered if he should call her back. Chae-in asked him if he had a fight with Mom, and Ji-hoon apologized for making her scared by yelling. She told him that he couldn't fight with her as the man realized that he could never have an argument in front of the girl ever again. He brought the girl back inside the house and told her that he would follow her in soon. Once Chae-in was inside, he tried to call Yina back to apologize to her, but the automated voice told him the number he called couldn't be reached. He was in disbelief that she could have blocked him in a short amount of time, calling again only to be met with the same voicemail. He kept calling and calling, but nothing changed, as Ji-hoon started to think that that was his last call with Yina. However, while she didn't respond to his calls, she did text him to apologize for the way she came off, and said that she did think about it before speaking. Yina explained that she wants to contact him, and Chae-in as well, but calling had been difficult for her, so she suggested that he should just text her instead. As Yina was about to send him the money for either a tutor or books, Ji-hoon had wondered where she was getting the money to be able to send so much every month. He worried that she was doing something illegal to earn the money, asking her if she was doing so. The girl just laughed through text and told him that it was just her allowance from her rich family, shocking the man. He planned to ask Chae-in what house she lived in before his, and went back into the building to continue the night. The next day, Chae-in told Ji-hoon that she had gotten lost in her mother's house before a butler would find her, causing Ji-hoon to be taken aback by his imagination and the idea of Yina having a mansion with a butler. His mother walked toward him and asked if anything was up with Yina, but he reassured his mother and told her that she just had family matters to attend to. Ji-hoon started to theorize that Yina's family wealth was due to a family feud, knowing that there would be issues over inheritance with that kind of riches. Chae-in jumped into the conversation to tell her father about all the fun she had and how she wanted to come again, and Ji-hoon pat her head in agreement. He knew that he didn't need to rush his decisions, as he had a lot more time left to live with the little girl. It had been a week since New Year's, and Ji-hoon had gone back to the glasses shop to check his eyes once again. He had surprisingly learned that his eyes were now 1.0 instead of in the negatives, meaning that he had average vision now. The doctor grabbed his hands and desperately asked for his permission to be used as a case study for her thesis. He was fine with it, but asked the lady if his diagnosis meant that he didn't need glasses anymore, to which she responded that it was obvious he could just go home. Ji-hoon had started to tear up in joy after learning that he could finally escape from his glasses life after 15 years. He started to walk back home and wondered how a situation like that could even happen. Everyone in his life will be surprised and think that he had surgery in order to make his eyes better, staring at himself in the glass of one of the nearby stores. People looked at him in annoyance while he was stuck in self-admiration. His phone ringing brought him back to reality as Chong-soo called him to make sure that he wasn't dead. Ji-hoon made a joke before his friend had asked him why he was gone for a month, to which Ji-hoon explained that something had happened at home. His friend had suddenly guessed what it was, asking if he was getting married, which caused Ji-hoon to jump in surprise. Ji-hoon told him no, that wasn't the reason, and tried to explain that there was something else. He remembered that he actually had no reason to hide Chae-in from Chong-soo, and suddenly told him to come to his house if he was curious, and then hung up. He walked into his house and greeted his daughter. The girl noticing that he wasn't wearing glasses and complimenting him about how good he looked without them. Ji-hoon asked the girl if it was true, and she agreed, saying that his old ones looked fat on him, which stabbed at Ji-hoon's confidence. She hugged her father and told him that he shouldn't wear glasses anymore, before Ji-hoon changed the topic to ask the girl what she did while he was gone. Chae-in had been studying and watching videos on the internet, seeing a group of men who were dancing to which Ji-hoon recognized as the most popular K-pop group. The little girl claimed that she was going to make her father as cool as them, but Ji-hoon didn't believe it was possible and thanked her anyway. He started to wonder if he should start paying attention to what he wore now, ever since Chae-in started to watch him too. The sun started to set and Ji-hoon started to cook dinner for Chae-in, as she loved it when he cooked. Before he could decide on the side dish, someone had came to the door, and Chae-in got his attention so he could answer it. He was surprised to see that it was Chong-soo and his friends, asking Chae-in if it was okay for them to eat with the two of them. Chae-in assumed that they were poor if they came to Ji-hoon for food, and remembered her mom telling her to always help poor people, so she agreed to the situation. The door opened and Chong-soo was about to walk in until he noticed Chae-in's presence. His friends had wondered what was going on and tried to push Chong-soo in until they also noticed the small girl. The three men now standing in shock. Ji-hoon introduced the girl as his daughter, but Chang-soo didn't believe him until Chae-in introduced herself, shocking the men even more before Chang-soo asked if she was adopted. Ji-hoon felt offended and changed the topic by asking why he was there and what was with the bags. The man explained that Ji-hoon told him to come if he was curious, and so he did, hoping that they could talk while having some drinks. Ji-hoon refused the offer for the drinks, as he had a kid in the house, but it was true that Chang-soo didn't know about the kid since Ji-hoon used to be alone at home 2 months ago. Ji-hoon had brought out the paternity test, and the 3 men stared at it with more shock. Chang-soo explained that it was naturally hard to believe given the circumstances, and Chae-in had suddenly stood on their side in agreement, causing Ji-hoon to sweat drop. He accepted his lack of communication and invited the men into his house, feeling the need to explain it all to them. Chang-soo was surprised to learn that Ji-hoon hadn't seen Chae-in's mother in 7 years, wondering if Yina was pretty since Chae-in was also pretty and asked for pictures. Ji-hoon didn't have any pictures but affirmed that she was definitely pretty, and Chang-soo started to believe it as Chae-in didn't take after Ji-hoon at all. Glad that it wasn't that way anyway. These words had caused Ji-hoon to punch Chang-soo in anger as the man claimed that he was just joking. The other 2 of the group put the jokes aside and genuinely complimented him for how he was looking handsome nowadays, saying that it might be more believable about Chae-in being his daughter. One of them asked if he had eye surgery, but Ji-hoon explained that his eyesight just naturally got better, but was glad that he had gotten better with himself after starting to take care of Chae-in. The girl jumped in to call her dad the most handsome, as 2 men at the table knew that Chae-in was a daddy's girl. Ji-hoon started to flex his daughter by telling the group of men that Chae-in had already started to learn quadratic equations ever since they started learning how to count a month ago. They were simply in disbelief, which caused Ji-hoon to feel offended and have Chae-in affirm that she could do it. One of the men had written a math problem for her to solve, and she did it with such ease, amazing the men. Chang-soo knew that Chae-in would be successful in anything if she was that smart, and believed that Ji-hoon wouldn't need to worry after retirement, half joking that, they should be closer together, definitely for no ulterior motive. Ji-hoon knew that Chae-in was definitely smart, but felt as though she was too smart for him to raise on his own, believing that she would finish high school math before he could even get his master's. He went back into thinking about sending her to a gifted education center until Chang-soo suddenly cut him off from his thoughts by suggesting sending Chae-in to their school's competition for geniuses. Ji-hoon didn't believe that she was old enough for it to work, but Chang-soo reassured that it would be possible with the right connections. He still didn't fully believe his friend, but decided to trust him and just see how it would go. The next day, Chang-soo called Ji-hoon back and asked if he was free that Friday in order for Chae-in to enter the competition, as Chang-soo had somehow made plans with the professor in charge and that professor wanted to see the scene in person. Ji-hoon believed that he had time to go and told Chang-soo that before they hung up, and the man started to sweat in fear that his daughter is now actually getting tested for her intelligence. Ji-hoon was worried that he had possibly made a mistake by assuming she was a genius so fast, until Chae-in had smiled at him and asked him what he was thinking about. Seeing her smile made him feel at ease as his worries melted away, and he believed that it shouldn't matter. Chae-in would still be his daughter, and he told her that he would love her no matter what. The day of the interview finally arrived, and a lady in a white coat had greeted Chae-in, introducing herself as Professor Bak-nai. The little girl responded brightly as the professor turned to Ji-hoon and said that she prepared sets of questions to test the girl on. Chae-in was told to solve as many as she could in 1 hour of time, as Ji-hoon watched in the distance, worrying that Chae-in would have trouble focusing. After the hour was done, the little girl gave Professor Bak the packet, the woman astonished by the girl's concentration skills and hoped that the results were good. She told Ji-hoon to wait patiently while she looked over the results, and Ji-hoon thought he could possibly have hope about the situation doing well. He brought the expectations down immediately to prevent himself from being let down, telling his daughter once again that he would love her no matter what results she got. Once Professor Bak had come back into the room, Ji-hoon's expectations and hope had skyrocketed as he was excited to see what they were. The lady had explained the test Chae-in took and how things were calculated in order for them to figure out that Chae-in was a genuine genius in the top 0.04% of the world. She believed that the child would have a bright future. Professor Bak suggested sending the girl to the Gifted Education Center, but Ji-hoon believed it was only middle schoolers and up there. The lady reassured him that there were centers with elementary schoolers, but regardless, Chae-in would have a chance to fit in there. Ji-hoon asked Chae-in what she wanted to do, and she responded that she would do anything as long as it was with him. When he said it wasn't possible for him to be involved, she changed her mind and said that she wasn't interested. Remembering what Yina said, Ji-hoon apologized and said he was going to follow what Chae-in wanted, which slightly disappointed Professor Bak. The professor said if she were to ever change her mind, they should give her a call. Once Ji-hoon walked out of the building, Chang-soo ran up to see what the results were, and Ji-hoon explained that Chae-in was definitely at some of the highest levels in the world. and that the professor herself suggested the girl to be enrolled in a gifted education center, but Chae-in wasn't interested. Chang-soo thought of the situation being unlucky due to the girl's talent, and the two switched into the topic of what classes they could take for the next term. Ji-hoon was not going to pick any similar courses due to needing to change his schedule in order to take care of Chae-in, but Chang-soo asked if Ji-hoon could just take the girl to class with him. He thought it would be boring for the girl, but Chae-in disagreed and insisted that she actually wanted to go. He reluctantly agreed, but said that he wouldn't take her anymore if she did get bored. The girl jumping to hug her father in agreement and kissing him on the cheek with love. Before classes would resume for the year, Ji-hoon started to teach Chae-in English, and her genius started to show in that area as well. She was already able to read and write like a middle schooler within a week. Ji-hoon started to think of more things he could teach Chae-in and started to consider getting a tutor for the girl with the money that Yina sent. While the girl was reading the newspaper out loud to practice her English, she saw a picture of a woman playing the piano and asked what a pianist did. The epiphany came to Ji-hoon as he explained that they played piano and asked Chae-in if she wanted to learn piano, to which the girl agreed as long as Ji-hoon learned with her. He was unsuccessful to find a subject for the girl to learn without him being directly involved, and just decided to ask Chae-in what she did like in general. Unfortunately, that question was met with the expected answer of anything with his presence. He was worried about her continuing to want to do everything with him and not being independent, so he was going to continue finding things that the girl liked. He found a new idea and decided that they were going to go to the library and have her read books until she found things that she liked. When they arrived at the library, the lady at the counter almost didn't let them in because of Chae-in being a child, worried that she was going to make too much noise. Ji-hoon reassured the woman that it would be fine and that they would leave immediately if Chae-in did indeed make too much noise. They started to walk through the library as people around them started to stare at the two as they held hands with one another. Ji-hoon whispered to the girl to pick up all of the books that she liked, and she was off to choose from the shelves. People continued to stare at Ji-hoon, which was expected since it was unnatural for a 7-year-old to be reading all these books. Suddenly, his phone had rung, and Ji-hoon wondered who it was, until his eyes widened to see that it was his old professor who had gotten fired. Ji-hoon tapped Chae-in's shoulder and told her that he was going to take a call, a rage fueling the child's eyes as he read the name of Ji-hoon's old professor, the girl wondering if the professor was going to mess with her dad again. When Ji-hoon had taken the call, he was immediately met with the man yelling at him and asking if he was the one who brought him into the situation and reported him for embezzlement. Ji-hoon didn't know what Dong-ho was talking about, as the man continued to accuse and threaten Ji-hoon for a thing he didn't commit. He decided that he had had enough and coldly asked Dong-ho if he and the others should testify against him. His ex-professor was offended and continued calling Ji-hoon many rude names. Ji-hoon was about to talk back before Chae-in pulled at his jacket and caused the man to leave it at that and just hang up the call. The child asked him if he was okay, to which he affirmed and asked why she came out. Chae-in admitted that she just wanted to go home, and that was what they did. As they walked home, Ji-hoon thought about how he wanted to curse Dong-ho out, but he couldn't in front of Chae-in, and decided that he was going to look into Dong-ho's crimes when he went home. Night came, and Ji-hoon called Chang-soo to figure out if he knew anything about Dong-ho embezzling company funds, explaining the call that happened earlier that day. He was planning to meet with Chang-soo the next day and research the situation, meaning that he would be busy and have to leave Chae-in to his parents again. Ji-hoon let the girl know about the situation and asked if she could stay with her grandparents, disappointing the girl at the thought of not being with her father for an entire day. He tried to reassure her and hoped she understood, to which she responded that she would endure it as she had no choice. The two had finally gone to bed, and after Ji-hoon had fallen asleep, Chae-in had opened her eyes with a rage. She used her magic to make her dad healthy and fall into a deep sleep once more, and then teleported herself over to Dong-ho's house again and punish him once again. Once she arrived, the girl noticed that there was no one in the house, confusing her. Chae-in asked her magic to take her to where Dong-ho was, and she found the man surrounded by alcohol, only mumbling about not forgiving those who went against him and wanting to make them pay. She wondered how she was to punish this man until her thoughts were cut off by the man breaking a bottle and starting to scream about wanting to kill everyone involved. Chae-in knew that he would break on his own, but couldn't have his rage be left alone and used her magic on him. Her job was done with the man, but Chae-in was disappointed that her restrictions prevent her from punishing him personally. However, this was not the end of her plan. Chae-in started to float away, ready to visit another place as she knew that night was going to be a busy one for her. Chae-in looked up sadly at her father as she asked Ji-hoon if he really had to go. Ji-hoon leaned over to the girl and reminded her that she promised to be good at her grandparents' house. He wanted the little girl to let it go because he wanted to prevent a person such as Dong-ho, his professor, in the same society as his daughter. Ji-hoon asked if she had a problem with that, but the girl sighed and reluctantly decided to do what she was told and wait for her dad. Before Ji-hoon left, his parents worriedly told him to not overdo himself or get into danger. but he reassured them that nothing bad would happen to him. Chae-in was disappointed to see her father go and do what he planned on, since she knew that Dong-ho would break on his own, even if her father didn't do anything. Yet she couldn't tell him that. Chang-soo was talking with a few other people while Ji-hoon walked into the room, confused about how there were more people than expected. Ji-hoon's friend told him that their ex-professor had supposedly called everyone else in the room and cursed them out as well, which is why they are all here and angry enough to want to do something about it. Surprised, Ji-hoon asked Chang-soo how far he had gotten on the research concerning the crimes of Dong-ho. The paper Chang-soo had in his hands held information on the history of research fees of Dong-ho, which surprised Ji-hoon from how much Dong-ho got away with. Everyone decided to start working together to figure out the other crimes of that cursed man. The day went by and they learned many things about that old man, such as another project he had stolen from. Chang-soo had found something that shocked him on the news and told everyone to look at it as well. Apparently, Dong-ho had attacked one of his students with a knife out of retaliation from an assault report which had led him to getting arrested. It was not specified that it was their ex-professor, but they were confident that it was him. Ji-hoon theorizing that the student that Dong-ho likely tried to murder was Ye-rim. They didn't like the idea of that happening, but were glad that the victim of the situation was not hurt. However, Ji-hoon was not satisfied with the situation, since that meant that Dong-ho was more insane than they thought. One of the men in the room started to shudder in fear as he wondered what that old man would do to them if they tried to expose him, worrying that Dong-ho would come to retaliate against them. They all felt disappointed after all the work they had put in, but Ji-hoon made a compromise and suggested that they just send a letter to the police after they organize all the evidence. Deciding to pack up and get some food and drinks, everyone started to pack up as Ji-hoon left the room. He was disappointed that he wouldn't be able to get some revenge on the man considering Dong-ho had already hit rock bottom, but decided that it was a good thing. Ji-hoon came home and his daughter looked up at him with a disappointed look as she asked her father if he was drinking. He tried to reassure the girl that he only drank a little, but Chae-in knew the truth and told him that it wasn't healthy to drink. She proceeded to ask if everything he prepared went well that day, but Ji-hoon didn't know if he could tell something like that to the little girl, even if he wanted to talk about it. While Ji-hoon was thinking about this, the little girl started to show her frustration while asking her father why he wasn't telling her. He started to explain the whole situation with Dong-ho to her in simple words, and told her about how he still felt iffy about it. But the little girl confidently reassured her father that she knew Dong-ho would break on his own. Ji-hoon was confused as to how his daughter would know until Chae-in tried to correct herself, and then changed the subject by telling Ji-hoon that she would protect him. Ji-hoon thanked the girl and felt comforted by having her in his life. They finally went home and Chae-in immediately went to find more things to fix about her father while he was sleeping. She knew that she couldn't change too many things about his body at once or else Ji-hoon's body wouldn't be able to take it. To prioritize, she decided that she was going to make his skin better, touching her hand against his face and chanting for his skin to get healthier. Chae-in decided that that was all for the day and wished for her father to have sweet dreams. The next day, it was discovered that Dong-ho was officially arrested. Ji-hoon looked at his phone as he hoped that the man would rot in prison for at least 30 years. He stretched and started to wonder what he should do about his career and what to do about teaching Chae-in, specifically what to teach her and how. After all that he had taught her related to academics, the only subjects left were art and sports. But Chae-in didn't want to learn anything without her father being there. Ji-hoon searched around and decided that he would buy a portable piano for Chae-in to learn and play, knowing that she was interested in piano a previous time. He did remember how the girl might not be interested if he didn't do it with her, and immediately started to learn how to master piano in a short amount of time. A few days later, Ji-hoon was seen playing the piano he bought for Chae-in in front of the girl, impressing her with no problem as she complimented him. Chae-in told Ji-hoon that she wanted him to teach her, relieving the man that she was finally interested in the subject. He started to teach her the notes on the piano and explain how the notes sounded, but Chae-in already understood how it worked and started to replay the song he had played perfectly. Ji-hoon was impressed and in disbelief, asking the girl if she had learned before, but she just smiled and explained that she just did what he did. He started to play a video of someone playing another piano song and asked his daughter if she could follow that person, and Chae-in did as so, letting her talent be known of how she could learn piano so quickly. Ji-hoon looked at his daughter while sweat dropping, knowing that Chae-in was not just a regular genius, she was the birth of a genius that would define the era. He remembered how Leonardo da Vinci was a genius in all categories, and wondered if Chae-in was a genius like him, imagining how knowledgeable she would be in just a few years. Ji-hoon dismissed the ridiculousness of the idea and reminded himself that she was still a genius that he couldn't handle with his knowledge. But Chae-in didn't want to do anything without him. He almost thought that he should just let her play with dirt like other kids at her age, but realized how much that would waste her talent. All of this thinking led him to his friend, Chang-soo, as he asked him for opinions on what to teach Chae-in. After his friend had heard about the girl's situation, Chang-soo just told Ji-hoon to let Chae-in be and let her do things when she wants to. This made Ji-hoon's eyes widen, as he didn't think of it like that, thanking his friend. Chang-soo started to call himself Chae-in's uncle after the thanks, but Ji-hoon disagreed with that idea. His friend joked that the girl was going to learn all of the bad stuff from him, causing Ji-hoon to act like he was going to pick a fight with him, but Chang-soo coincidentally got a call and scurried away. Ji-hoon watched him walk off in slight disappointment, but knew that Chang-soo had opened his eyes about how to teach Chae-in from now on. What is most important is what Chae-in thinks. Chang-soo came back in a hurry to ask Ji-hoon if he knew someone called Professor Choi Woo-taek. That man apparently talked to Chang-soo and the topic of Ji-hoon and Chae-in came up, the professor wanting to see the both of them. Ji-hoon was confused as to why that man would want to see his daughter, but Chang-soo insisted that Ji-hoon should go and see him. Choi Woo-taek was a man who majored in neuroscience and was currently doing research on AI. Ji-hoon was confused even more, but decided to do as his friend said, as he didn't see any harm in it, hoping that this professor would be nothing like Dong-ho. The day of meeting Professor Choi Woo-taek had arrived, and Chae-in was excited to go to school with her father. The little girl stopped and turned around to ask her father if Professor Choi was someone who was mean to him. Ji-hoon remembered the one time he took that man's lecture and had gotten a B+ from it, and when he went to ask about it, was told that it was the best grade he could get. He started to sweat drop at the memory before his thoughts were interrupted by Chae-in asking her father why he wasn't answering. Ji-hoon reassured the girl that Professor Choi was a good person and to not worry, though he himself was very worried. He hoped that nothing embarrassing would happen in front of Chae-in at the meeting. Ji-hoon and Chae-in stood in front of the professor and greeted him as Professor Choi greeted them back, letting them know about the snacks he provided. The two sat down at the couch as Chae-in helped herself to some cookies happily, while Ji-hoon asked the man in front of them why he wanted to see Chae-in and him. Professor Choi asked Ji-hoon if he knew what his research topic was, to which Ji-hoon said that he knew it was something in the AI field. The old man confirmed that was correct, but specified that it was specifically about making a proper AI using a child's brain. Ji-hoon realized that Professor Choi wanted to use Chae-in as his research model, listening to the man's explanation and how he had heard about the girl from Professor Bach. The old man started to mention how he was asked about entering Chae-in into next month's competition, catching Ji-hoon's attention. Professor Choi had been holding the contest in order to conduct research based on the children who excelled in the contests. He was in despair at the results because of the age range that entered, but Professor Bach had opened his eyes to the tests of Chae-in, explaining how he would have tried to reach Ji-hoon and Chae-in earlier if it weren't for that Dong-ho situation. The old man asked Ji-hoon if it was okay for the little girl to be his research subject, but Ji-hoon was worried about the dangers of it. However, he was reassured by the teacher that nothing bad would happen, especially since Ji-hoon would have to participate too. Ji-hoon was then asked if he wanted to think about studying at Professor Choi's research lab again, surprising the man. Ji-hoon explained that he didn't think the AI field was a good match for him since he had only gotten a B+ in the class. But Professor Choi corrected him and explained that he believed that A's were not something a student could reach, and that B+ were given to students he thought were great. Chae-in agreed at how smart her father was, and Professor Choi told Ji-hoon to not look down on himself too much as he was talented. This was the first praise Ji-hoon had heard since coming to grad school, immediately melting his distrust. He had been doubting his entire doctorate because of Dong-ho, but Ji-hoon still enjoyed his studies and believed that he could get somewhere with Professor Choi. They both bid their goodbyes and Ji-hoon and Chae-in left the building together. The little girl asked her father if she was going to go to school with him every day, as she was excited to spend more time with Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon's sweat dropped and explained to the girl that he wouldn't be able to come with her because of classes, disappointing the girl. Chae-in was confused as to why this was the case, but Ji-hoon explained that he was going to tell Professor Choi that the next day would be difficult for him to join. The little girl looked down in sadness, not wanting to go alone, but Ji-hoon sighed with a smile before telling Chae-in that he was just joking. This caused the girl to be upset about the situation, telling her father not to make that kind of joke again. But Ji-hoon apologized and said that they would get something delicious for dinner to make up for the joke. The next day, Ji-hoon brought Chae-in to Professor Choi and the old man was excited at their presence. Ji-hoon asked what Chae-in was supposed to be doing, and Professor Choi explained that it was just going to be learning in order for him to create an AI model based on how she learns. Chae-in was worried that she wouldn't be able to do everything with her father, only for Professor Choi to reassure her that Ji-hoon was going to watch from afar. They started the research right away, and the main purpose of it was to see which parts of Chae-in's brain were active while she was learning. A tutor was provided to help Chae-in with more of the high school math that she had previously been tested on as Ji-hoon stood by, impressed at the speed that his daughter was learning at and feeling as though he was holding her back. The old man walked up next to Ji-hoon and told him that if he succeeded in creating a model with Chae-in's brain, AI tech would leap 10 years, causing a spark of motivation to burn brightly inside Professor Choi. He wanted to do more research every single day instead of every few days, but Ji-hoon had to tell the old man the truth about how that wouldn't be possible because of classes, and how Chae-in would only participate if Ji-hoon were there. Professor Choi felt as though he could change the girl's mind and was willing to change the entire interior of the lab if it's for Chae-in. However, even though he did the next day, Chae-in still saw it as boring as her father wasn't there with her. The old man felt defeated as the girl confirmed what Ji-hoon knew would happen. Ji-hoon told the professor that he would likely only participate in the research till June since that would be when he graduates. Professor Choi was desperate in getting the two to stay with the research, and the old man told Ji-hoon that the school's Neural Information Network research lab was hiring, and brought a paper to Ji-hoon's face for him to sign. Ji-hoon was alarmed before he realized that he would be guaranteed a spot if he signed, feeling tempted, but deciding that he would think about it first before making a decision. There was another place he was trying to apply to, but the professor kept trying to show the pros of staying with his research, such as free time. The old man had gotten Chae-in on his side by asking if she wanted him to be rich or to play with her a lot, and she agreed with the latter since her mom's family was already rich. Ji-hoon didn't know what to pick, and Professor Choi noticed and decided to make a lie to cause guilt tripping, telling Chae-in that her dad liked money more than playing with her. He stood there in disbelief, not knowing where to begin with the situation until the professor took the paper away. The little girl gave puppy dog eyes and asked if her father wanted to leave her, which caused Ji-hoon to spring into action and shout at Professor Choi that he would sign the paper. Everyone's demeanor changed to one of happiness as Ji-hoon stood there feeling manipulated. He signed the paper in reluctance, but he was curious to see how Chae-in would continue to grow, as he put his future into the professor's hands. As time went by, Professor Choi continued to show Chae-in various learning models and situations, trying to understand her brain. And finally, the day came when Chae-in was off to take the test. Ji-hoon reminded her that she shouldn't be nervous, but Chae-in was confident and told her father to promise to take her on a trip if she did well, walking off with a wave. Ji-hoon met with the professor once more after seeing his daughter off, and talked to the old man about how brave Chae-in seemed. Professor Choi patted him on the shoulder and complimented him that Chae-in must take after him, considering the presentation he did in front of the Heichi CEO. Ji-hoon changed the subject and tried to ask the professor if he would rethink about making him do a lecture in front of high school students. He was worried about ruining the lab's reputation, but Professor Choi knew that Ji-hoon was the perfect candidate due to his ability to speak his point clearly, his friends having talked so highly of him previously. There were still some things he needed to improve on, but experience was the best way to get better. Ji-hoon felt a new wave of confidence rush through him as he went off to lecture a high school in the countryside about AI. He took a pill to calm himself down and walked up to the stage as he was called, realizing how many people were there, and it was more than he expected. Not only that, but there was no one in the audience who seemed to have a soul in them. Ji-hoon's sweat dropped, but he had prepared a trump card that no student with upcoming exams could ignore. He finally spoke and introduced himself as a researcher at the Neural Information Network Research Center. These words made a lot of the students yawn in disinterest, until Ji-hoon explained that the center was located at Korea University, a top school that caught the attention of a lot of the students. He continued and told the audience that he had prepared a lecture that would help them raise their grades, immediately hooking everyone in the crowd. Ji-hoon felt accomplished knowing that his trump card worked, and then began the lecture, starting to explain the research they had been conducting and how the human brain was important to it. Time went by and Ji-hoon noticed how his plan of connecting the research to academic performance had caused a successful lecture. Thinking that he could smoothly end off the lecture with a joke, Chong-soo told him. He gave a laugh and mentioned his master's degree and preparation for a doctorate degree, trying to tell the difference by comparing it to unfermented and fermented kimchi. Awkwardness filled the room as the students were at a loss of what the joke meant, and Ji-hoon felt embarrassed by telling it and quickly just went to ending the lecture as normal. Ji-hoon was ready to leave and was complimented by a woman about the lecture he did, as it was the first time the students had been so good during one. She was impressed and praised Ji-hoon more, but mentioned the awkwardness of the joke at the end, causing Ji-hoon to feel embarrassed once again. The woman thanked him one last time, and Ji-hoon left feeling accomplished at how well he did, feeling a desire to want to do it again in the future. He walked into his school and wondered how Chae-in did on the test, starting to worry if she was crying about doing terribly. Ji-hoon walked into the room with hesitation to ask his daughter about the test, only to see Professor Choi comforting a crying Chae-in. He jumped over to the girl and asked the professor what happened, only for the old man to explain that he didn't expect the questions of the test to be this hard. Chae-in had supposedly left the test center not even an hour after the test had started and had been in the lab ever since. As he heard that Chae-in left the test center after not even an hour, Ji-hoon was left in disbelief. Ji-hoon looked at his crying daughter and wondered how hard the problems were to make Chae-in give up after only 45 minutes, thinking that Professor Choi was maybe being too harsh on the girl. Giving the girl a hug, Ji-hoon reassured her that she did well despite how hard the test was. Chae-in agreed that the test was hard and asked her father if the other kids in the center were sad because she was done so fast, causing Ji-hoon's worry to stop for that moment as he was confused. The little girl's sad act was dropped as she looked up at her father with achievement on her face as Ji-hoon wondered what she was implying. Professor Choi confirmed Ji-hoon's thoughts as he explained that Chae-in had finished the test in 45 minutes and left the testing center earlier, the girl beaming at Ji-hoon and begging for praise. The old man gave the test packet to Ji-hoon to solve the questions himself if he still didn't believe it. Ji-hoon was impressed at the level of difficulty the problems were on the test and how his daughter was able to solve them perfectly fine. He was about to ask about the facial expressions from earlier until the both of them told Ji-hoon that they were just pranking him, like how he did to Chae-in the other time. Ji-hoon felt disappointed for falling for it, and Professor Choi asked him if he knew who Paul Newman and William Sidus were. He had heard of them, but the professor started to explain the achievements those men had made during their youth, comparing Chae-in to them and telling Ji-hoon that the girl would change history because of her talents. Ji-hoon was told to raise his daughter well and to make sure to look for her mom, but Ji-hoon himself wasn't sure how to go about that. Professor Choi was staring at Ji-hoon's face, which confused the man until the professor explained that Ji-hoon's skin looked better than before. The old man had heard rumors from other students that Ji-hoon was supposedly taking care of his skin to get prepared for a wedding. Ji-hoon jumped in surprise at the casualness of these rumors, and the two men talked back and forth at each other, while Ji-hoon tried to explain how he didn't know why his skin was better. Chae-in jumped into the conversation and lied that it was because she gave him massages every night. Professor Choi laughed and joked that he would also become 20 years younger just from having Chae-in as a daughter, but his demeanor changed as he told Ji-hoon that he shouldn't do anything that would influence Chae-in negatively. Ji-hoon realized that Professor Choi only cared about what he did as long as it benefited Chae-in, making Ji-hoon find out that he was just a +1 to his own daughter. He left the building and thought the rumors about his supposed marriage would go away, yet that wasn't the case. As Ji-hoon walked around the school, people kept staring at Ji-hoon's face and asking if he was really getting married. Ji-hoon would respond with a question and ask if he would be getting married when he is so busy with Chae-in, theorizing that his skin was getting better these days because he wasn't as stressed. The person Ji-hoon was talking with looked defeated at the answer as he heard that Professor Choi had secured a position for Ji-hoon, meaning that his life was figured out. Ji-hoon tried to reassure the man that he still had things to worry about and that he would need to think about what he was going to do after. His friend still sighed in jealousy that Ji-hoon's army problem was solved, but Ji-hoon was in his thoughts, worried about what to do after he graduates, since he had planned to leave the care of Professor Choi by then. The best course of action was to get hired at a big corporation, but those positions pressure a person to retire early. Ji-hoon's mind kept fluctuating in decisions before a man called out to him and greeted him. That man was Supervisor Yang, the man that Ji-hoon had previously last seen at the Heichi presentation. They shook each other's hands as Yang explained that he had something he wanted to talk with Ji-hoon about, asking if he wanted to go get coffee. Ji-hoon narrowed his eyes in suspicion as he wondered if Yang was going to try and offer him something again, and took this meeting as a chance to make a final decision about his future. They went to get coffee and sat down facing each other, the two men chatting with one another. Ji-hoon was impressed at how fast the gap had already been closed by the skilled people of the Heichi company. Yang asked Ji-hoon if he thought about what he mentioned last time, confusing Ji-hoon, until Yang explained that the company was accepting applicants starting at the end of April. Ji-hoon expected this, but didn't know that he would actually be offered a position again, since it had been 3 months since Yang last made that offer. He continued to think about it, starting to think that it might be better to work for Heichi, especially since it was more related to his major. However, the thought of Chae-in made him make his decision. Ji-hoon told Yang that he had already gotten a position at his school to do research. Yang looked disappointed, but congratulated Ji-hoon on the opportunity. It was a shame, but Ji-hoon felt relieved that he had finally made a decision at all, bidding his goodbye to Yang as he thought that this would be the end of his relationship with Heichi, or at least so he thought. Sometime later, Yang was seen walking into the lab where Ji-hoon was working at, confused at each other's presence. Ji-hoon explained that he worked there and asked Yang why he was there. Yang explained that Heichi was beginning a collaboration with Professor Choi in order to be the first in the industry to make AI secretaries. The platinum-haired man laughed as he joked that Ji-hoon was destined to work with Heichi, and said that he could maybe even be one of the Heichi employees in a few years. Ji-hoon was in awe at the idea of a potential scouting offer from the nation's best company and started to daydream about it. He immediately shut the idea down though because he didn't want to get his hopes too high up. Soon mid-April came and the change of the season was near. Women around the campus would stare at Ji-hoon, who held his daughter in his arms, as Chae-in would ask if she was heavy or not, noticing the struggle on her father's face. He reassured Chae-in that it wasn't a problem while he continued to walk across the campus, attracting unwanted attention. He didn't carry Chae-in because he wanted attention. In fact, he carried her for the sole reason of decreasing the amount of people trying to talk to her as the weather had been getting warmer. Carrying his daughter had seemingly succeeded, but Ji-hoon had been feeling the effects of carrying the child, Chae-in noticing her father's tiredness. Ji-hoon felt his ego damaged as he wondered if he needed to start working out to carry Chae-in, even if she had only grown a little bit. Chang-soo noticed the two and tried to happily hug Chae-in, claiming himself as her uncle. The little girl held up her hand to stop the man and said that her father said she would get the stupid disease if he came near her. Chang-soo felt offended and wanted Ji-hoon to introduce him properly to Chae-in. Ji-hoon did as so and lied that his friend had a lot he wanted to teach Chae-in, the girl happily asking what he could teach her. But Chang-soo knew the trick Ji-hoon was playing and grumbled. Some other people they knew started to walk over, causing Chang-soo to try and greet the women until one of them ran past him to grab Chae-in and compliment her. The girl hugging Chae-in was Yoo Eun-jung, a friend from the school club, and was there to help shop for Chae-in's clothes. Chang-soo told Eun-jung to stop bothering the little girl and introduce her friends. The other two women introduced themselves as Hwang Soo-young and Kim Tae-yeon. Eun-jung introduced Ji-hoon, Chang-soo, and Chae-in to the women and talked about how cute the little girl was, the two other women agreeing. They tried to walk up to admire her beauty, but Chae-in hid behind her father. Everyone started to chat with one another as Chang-soo felt excluded, and Eun-jung told Ji-hoon that she was happy to help him find clothes for Chae-in, especially since it was her duty as the Chae-in fan club president. Ji-hoon was confused until the women explained that the three of them were the official Chae-in fan club, Vitamin C. Ji-hoon was in disbelief, but Eun-jung was being fully serious. She was explained that there was even a fan club for the Flying Spaghetti Monster and asked Ji-hoon what would be wrong with having one for Chae-in. Eun-jung continued complimenting Ji-hoon's daughter and tried to convince Ji-hoon that the little girl would have a fandom that would span across Earth and space. Ji-hoon didn't know where to begin to refute the woman and just stood there, sweat-dropping in silence. He watched the women happily crowd around his daughter and wondered if it would be fine for them to choose clothes for the girl. They went shopping, but Chang-soo was too busy trying to talk to Eun-jung's friends and ask them out for food after shopping. The two women avoided the man as Eun-jung would angrily pull him away from them as everyone felt disappointed in the man's actions. She reprimanded Chang-soo and told him that they were not interested in him, but she whispered to him that if he dragged out the shopping, she would introduce him to other girls, making the man happy once more. Eun-jung watched the man walk off and started to regret bringing him along, but she knew that she needed him if she wanted to be with Chae-in longer, knowing that Ji-hoon would try to leave as soon as possible if he was just surrounded by women. They all found a store to check out and started to look through the options of clothes and made Chae-in try all of the outfits on, making Ji-hoon sweat drop as he watched his daughter being put through this whole situation. The fashion show began, and they tried many outfits on the girl while Ji-hoon and Chang-soo stood off at the side, watching with a soft feeling in them as Chae-in looked good in any clothing. The three women could not decide on which of the clothing they had chosen, and Chae-in didn't help, as she didn't have a preference. Ji-hoon watched everything play out as he just thought about wanting to go home. The three girls almost came close to their decision, until Chang-soo piped in to tell everyone about looking at other shops to come up with a better decision, causing Ji-hoon and Chae-in to look at the group in disappointment at the man dragging out the shopping day longer. Chae-in asked her father if the shopping was going to be done by today, but Ji-hoon himself didn't know at this point. They went to another store and brought out more outfits for the girl to wear, still not knowing what to buy for Chae-in. Eun-jung suggested that they should just buy all of the clothes, and Ji-hoon brought out his credit card happily as he just wanted the day to end. Ji-hoon was about to ask for the total of the clothes until Eun-jung jumped in to pay for them, shocking the man. He still tried to pay instead, but the woman insisted. Chang-soo spoke and suggested that Ji-hoon should buy everyone dinner, and Ji-hoon asked his daughter if it would be okay to eat with his friends, to which Chae-in said that she was completely okay with it, because her father would be there. After going out for dinner, Eun-jung started to regret bringing Chang-soo along, everyone at the table feeling embarrassed at the situation as they stared at Chang-soo trying to flirt with one of Eun-jung's friends. Chang-soo used a dad joke on Tae-yeon, but she sighed and admitted to Chang-soo that she didn't find his jokes amusing, causing the man to feel a pain in his chest from the words. Chang-soo didn't know how to respond to that, as Tae-yeon explained that not even her dad would make those kinds of jokes. Soo-young told Ji-hoon that his skin looked nice, and Eun-jung wondered why he was getting more handsome lately. Ji-hoon didn't really want to get into the topic, since many others would already ask the same of him from school about getting married. Tae-yeon and Soo-young both complimented Ji-hoon on his looks, and claimed that Chae-in got her looks from him. Chang-soo watched the exchange with jealousy, as he thought about how he wanted to become popular too. After that day, Chang-soo would think deeply about his own appearance. At school, he would go up to Ji-hoon to ask him if he was really that unlikable. Ji-hoon was honest about the embarrassment he felt for Chang-soo after seeing how he was behaving. His friend was dejected by the news and told Ji-hoon that he had thought about it and deemed that his looks were important, deciding that he was going to work out with Ji-hoon from now on. Ji-hoon refused as he wasn't sure who would care for Chae-in, but Chang-soo continued to beg the man. Ji-hoon started to run away from his friend, but this wouldn't be the end. One rejection should have been enough, but Chang-soo kept begging Ji-hoon all throughout May. He would give gifts to Ji-hoon while keeping puppy dog eyes on his face, while Ji-hoon would stare in disbelief at how Chang-soo hadn't given up yet. Ji-hoon kept trying to remind Chang-soo that he couldn't work out with the man because he had to take care of Chae-in. But the friend continued to try, proceeding to try to guilt-trip Ji-hoon about a previous time when Chang-soo brought food and stuff to Ji-hoon during his busyness. It wasn't that Ji-hoon didn't want to go with Chang-soo to the gym, but Chae-in was his top priority. Professor Choi would walk into the room with a compromise, telling Ji-hoon that he was going to measure Chae-in's physical aptitude anyway. So, during the times he did that, why not work out? Ji-hoon asked if that was okay, but the old man admitted that he was touched by the supposed faithfulness of Chang-soo. Ji-hoon made his friend promise to always go to the gym with him, even if he needed to be dragged. Chang-soo felt confident that he wouldn't give up, but a week later, he did the complete opposite. Ji-hoon felt as though the workouts were too easy for Chang-soo to be tired about, but his friend grabbed his shirt to ask if Ji-hoon had been getting some kind of energizer shots without him. Ji-hoon felt offended that his friend would think of him like that, Chae-in agreeing. Chang-soo looked dejected before leaving, wondering why he was the only one who was tired. Ji-hoon felt weird as well about the situation, also wondering why he felt fine after all of the exercise. He thought that he could have been one of the top 0.04% of prodigies in sports, but that wasn't the case. It was all thanks to Chae-in using her magic to make her father look and feel better. She felt accomplished and did a checkup on what changes she had done and what she needed to do in the future. Chae-in decided that it would be okay to do a couple more things before going to sleep, and those things were to change his eyes and nose to look like a couple of people from the K-pop group. After she was finished, the girl was surprised at how amazing her magic skills were and was excited how much more handsome her father could be, quickly laying down next to Ji-hoon and falling asleep. 3 weeks after starting the workouts, Chang-soo and his friends were staring in disbelief at Ji-hoon. Chang-soo had been exercising the same with Ji-hoon, but he was upset at how much Ji-hoon had glowed up in 3 weeks. However, Ji-hoon wasn't sure how he became that way either. People say that losing weight was better than plastic surgery, but Ji-hoon remembered how different he used to look in the past before gaining weight. Ji-hoon was his skinniest during high school, but no one had told him how he was good looking until now. Chang-soo begged Ji-hoon to tell him what he did to become so handsome, but Ji-hoon still couldn't find a way to explain it to him. His other friends told Chang-soo that it was likely that Ji-hoon's handsomeness was showing through after losing weight, which jabbed at Chang-soo's confidence again. Professor Choi walked up to everyone and asked what they were talking about, but once he learned the topic, complimented Ji-hoon once again for his improved appearance. The old man suddenly asked Ji-hoon if he wanted to become the mascot of the research lab and be in charge of all of the presentations from now on. Ji-hoon didn't know why this was happening, until Professor Choi explained that it would be best to make the people listening to the presentation feel as though they were partying during it. It sounded ridiculous, but Ji-hoon was convinced. However, he was still confused as to how he was getting more handsome by the day. Chae-in stood behind her father with a content smile, knowing that everything was going according to her plan. And just like that, Ji-hoon's appearance continued to improve each day. Another day, Chang-soo had noticed that Ji-hoon had gotten taller. During their chat, a girl had walked up to Ji-hoon and asked for his number, surprising both of the men in front of her. Ji-hoon apologized and said that he had a kid, Chang-soo explaining that it was the popular one on campus. The girl apologized and walked away. Chang-soo started to wonder if he needed plastic surgery. Ji-hoon told his friend to stop it with the nonsense and that they should go finish up their report, causing Chang-soo to throw a fake tantrum and claim that he would run away. Ji-hoon asked how Chang-soo would deal with Chae-in if she were mad at him, but he claimed that he wouldn't care. When they finally met with Chae-in, Ji-hoon and his daughter greeted each other. Ji-hoon told Chae-in about Chang-soo's fake lie, which caused the little girl to give puppy dog eyes at the man. He didn't budge at first, but eventually Chang-soo fell for it and lost the battle. They finally sat down in order to work together to finish the report and to get it over with. Ji-hoon looked at the papers and realized that the problems were harder than he expected. But Chang-soo made a bet with him that he could finish the problems the fastest, with dinner being a reward for the winner. Chae-in was cheering for her father and chanted for her father to get smarter in that moment, causing Chang-soo to feel a sudden feeling in him that he was going to lose even if they hadn't started, but he still tried to hold some confidence. However, that confidence was short-lived, as Ji-hoon and Chae-in would be staring at Chang-soo, who was still on the problems, while Ji-hoon had finished a while ago. Chang-soo was in disbelief at the speed that his friend had finished all of the problems, but Ji-hoon explained that solving one problem made the others go by easily, and told Chang-soo to just get it done. Chang-soo finally finished the test and regretted making the bet, face-planting onto the table. Ji-hoon reassured his friend that he would buy dinner in the end, which caused the brown-haired man to shoot up in a sudden happiness. Chae-in told her father that she was starting to want to eat food that her father would cook, making Ji-hoon realize how much they had been eating out recently, but he couldn't break the promise with Chang-soo. To compromise, Ji-hoon made a promise to his daughter that he would cook food on the weekend, which caused the little girl to beam in happiness at her father. The three looked content as they all packed up to leave and eat out once again. After receiving that promise, Chae-in enjoyed her dinner. Ji-hoon was impressed at the amount of food that the chefs of the restaurant were giving them for free, and Chang-soo pointed at himself with confidence, thinking that it was all thanks to him being a regular. That was not the case. It was a secret that Chang-soo wasn't aware of, but the owners only gave the three free food because Chae-in was so good at finishing her plate. The weekend that Chae-in had been waiting for had finally came. The little girl opened up her eyes excitedly as she jumped up and begged for her father to get up or else she would draw on his face. Ji-hoon widened his eyes in surprise and sprouted into action, swatting his daughter away and locking her in a hug so she wouldn't draw on his face. Chae-in tried to fight out of his grasp, telling her father to stop playing as he promised that he would cook for her. Ji-hoon finally got up and walked into the kitchen to look through his cabinets, only to realize that he had seemingly gotten taller, wondering where he could have gotten his growth spurt. His height had been the same since his third year of middle school, but decided that he would see if there were any changes in his next checkup. Ji-hoon finished the food and let Chae-in know so she could sit at the dining table to eat. The food on the menu was tuna mayo rice balls, and the little girl ate it happily, thanking her father for keeping his promise and believing that the day was going to be good. Ji-hoon was glad that his daughter was eating so well and told her that they were going to have real fun at the theme park today. They finished their food and went out to the aforementioned theme park. The weather nice and blue in the month of May. Ji-hoon and Chae-in were just trying to have a nice day out, but everyone around them continued to stare at the duo and mention the beauty of both of them. The two were a very eye-catching pair, and Chae-in knew that her plan was playing out successfully as she smirked at all the people who were looking at them. She was glad her magic and massages were having an effect, but the girl felt disappointed that she couldn't tell her father about her efforts. Ji-hoon asked her if there was anything she wanted to ride, causing the girl to think about it for a while before something came to mind, and Chae-in pulled her father in a certain direction. The girl pointed up at the ride that she couldn't go on last time due to her height, but Ji-hoon looked up at the ride with worry as he didn't know how safe it was. He argued with himself about not wanting to be cowardly in front of his daughter, and decided to suck it up and go on it with Chae-in for her sake. The little girl excitedly claimed that it was going to be fun. However, it would be the complete opposite for her father. They went on the ride, and once they had gotten off, Ji-hoon felt as though he was going to throw up, but Chae-in was already looking at the park pamphlet to look for other rides. She showed Ji-hoon all the other rides that she was interested in riding, but Ji-hoon stared at it in confusion as to why a park would be advertising such rides to kids. Chae-in asked her father if he was afraid, but Ji-hoon feigned confidence. However, at that moment, he felt as though his life was in danger. Rides and rides later, Ji-hoon just wanted someone to save him. They finally sat down at a bench, Ji-hoon looking exhausted while his daughter was still looking for things to ride. She looked up at her father with happiness and told him that she would just ride all the things they couldn't that day the next year. A woman walked up to the two of them and asked if Chae-in was his daughter, to which Ji-hoon confirmed. The woman introduced herself as a writer for a K-drama and asked the two of them if they could act as extras for the show, causing Ji-hoon to worry about a lack of acting skills. But the woman said that the director wanted something natural. Ji-hoon asked his daughter if she wanted to be on TV and ride the merry-go-round, but the little girl exclaimed her excitement for the situation as she said she wanted to be on TV like a K-pop group they knew. Ji-hoon and Chae-in got onto one of the horses on the ride as Ji-hoon looked around in bewilderment, not realizing that it was a pretty popular K-drama. The little girl told her father that the lady in front of them was very pretty, as Ji-hoon explained that she was the main actress. Ji-hoon started to feel nervous, knowing that he really would be on TV considering he was behind the main actress. But his thoughts were interrupted by someone telling all of the actors to get into place. The director started filming, glad that the actress was still getting into character in a public setting, but his attention was caught by Ji-hoon and Chae-in, wondering where the pair had come from and how their acting was so natural. The director admired the beauty of both of them and realized that this was the perfect picture that he wanted to capture. He started to believe that this scene would make him receive the Best Scene of the Year award at the end of the year. A man walked up to the director and cut him out of his thoughts to let him know that the female lead was out of the shot, bringing the director back to reality as he realized he was going to have to shoot the scene again, as he was distracted by Ji-hoon and Chae-in. After the scene was reshot, they cut the footage and the director told everyone that they did a great job. People who were watching from afar cheered in excitement for the female lead. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon helped his daughter down onto the ground as he asked her if she had fun. They started to walk off, before some women who were watching the shoot said their comments out loud about how they thought that Chae-in was a new child actress. Ji-hoon smiled at their compliments as he knew that his daughter did look like she should be a celebrity. The two continued leaving until the woman from earlier called out to them and gave them an envelope of money for their participation. Ji-hoon didn't feel as though he deserved it, considering that they were just extras, but the woman insisted and asked for him to watch the episode later to see how his daughter did in it. Chae-in held the envelope excitedly as Ji-hoon praised the girl and asked what she wanted to use the money for. She thought for a second before the girl suddenly asked for a stock account for herself. Ji-hoon was shocked by her words and asked her if she knew what stocks were. But she was quick to answer about its definition, and Ji-hoon remembered that his daughter was a genius that took college-level math at the age of 7. He was still worried that she wouldn't be able to handle stocks and become depressed if she were to lose it all. However, Chae-in tried to reassure her father that everything would be okay and she could just do the safe ones if she was worried, surprising Ji-hoon by her confidence. He remembered Yina's words about teaching Chae-in how scary the world could be and saw this as an opportunity to teach the girl that, finally telling Chae-in that he would set one up for her. He gave one warning to her, and that was if she had lost all of her money, he would get rid of the account, to which Chae-in happily agreed. He finally created the account after that promise and gave control over to Chae-in, reminding her that they wouldn't deal with stocks again if she lost all of her money. The little girl reassured her father that it would be fine and asked if he was doubting her, but Ji-hoon claimed that he trusted her. Chae-in looked away with confidence and told him that she would give him an allowance once she got a lot of money. He sweat-dropped and just told her that they could go eat delicious food and go to fun places if she gained money, causing the girl to excitedly say that they would go to the amusement park once a month. Ji-hoon was in thought, watching his excited daughter as he thought that she would learn something about the world after losing her 200,000 won. Time went by and Ji-hoon's dissertation examination date was already here. He gave an envelope to Professor Choi while feeling anxious, even after fixing it over 10 times the previous night. Ji-hoon already started to give up about it having any decency, until the old man finally spoke and talked about how good it was, surprising Ji-hoon. Professor Choi insisted about its work and told Ji-hoon to have confidence. But Ji-hoon started to wonder why everything was going so well for him recently. He left the building after getting Professor Choi's approval, only for his suspicions to rise even more when he had went in for a physical checkup and confirmed that he truly had grown in height. The nurse explained that there were some people who grew in later ages, but that would have meant his growth plates had been open this entire time. Was he evolving? After the checkup, Ji-hoon told people around him about what was happening. Chang-soo agreed that Ji-hoon had been gaining height among other things, but no one could figure out the truth and only knew how weird it was. Ji-hoon's friend wondered if Professor Choi would know something about the situation, but Ji-hoon himself would explain that the old man would just pass it off, and say that weirder things would have happened. Another one of Ji-hoon's friends suggested that he should go to a different doctor to check if his growth plate was open, as it would only be 50 to 60,000 won. But Chang-soo only saw that as a waste of money. Ji-hoon watched his friends continue to argue as he realized that he may just be overthinking everything, especially since nothing bad had happened. He interrupted them and told them that he was going to get going, but Chang-soo grabbed Ji-hoon before he could leave since the three men wanted to watch the new episode of the K-drama that Ji-hoon was an extra for. He kept trying to leave, but his friends did not give him a break and continued to beg until Ji-hoon would give up and agree to watch it with them. Everyone had gotten dinner and sat at the couch waiting for the commercials to be over. Chae-in was sitting in her father's lap as she mentioned how excited she was to see how she looked. Ji-hoon was originally going to pretend that it wasn't a big deal, but he was very nervous to see how it was shot. Chang-soo was worried how it was going to play out, considering he heard that day's episode was going to be really sad, and how it would be hard to focus with someone who looked like a squid, causing Ji-hoon to hit Chang-soo as karma for those words. The episode finally started to play and everyone went back to the couch to focus as they waited for the theme park scene. However, it would take much longer than expected. 20 minutes passing turned into 40 minutes passing and the episode was almost over, as Chae-in asked her father where she was. Ji-hoon was worried that it got completely cut out of the episode and didn't want his daughter to be disappointed, praying for even just a second that they got into the episode. Suddenly, the main cast finally made their way to the theme park, which had gotten everyone excited as they finally saw Chae-in and Ji-hoon on the merry-go-round. Chang-soo was surprised to actually see Ji-hoon behind the female lead, and told Ji-hoon that he made a nice memory with the little girl. One of the other friends caught the attention of the others as he mentioned that Ji-hoon and Chae-in were really zoomed in on the camera. Everyone was saying that Jihoon looked like a real genuine actor at that point. They were surprised to see that the two had even gotten the ending scene, and saw how they were trending on the internet. Chang-soo started to claim that they were only trending because of Chae-in's beauty and how Jihoon just happened to be there. But Jihoon started to kick his friend as more payback for his words, the little girl cheering him on. Jihoon knew that Chae-in was cute, but claimed that not everyone could be a celebrity. However, he was blushing at the thought of it actually happening. He asked his daughter if she wanted to continue being on TV, but she insisted that she would not do it if her father wasn't there with her. Chang-soo asked Jihoon if he would do it himself, but Jihoon didn't believe that he was that good looking, to which his friend agreed, causing both Jihoon and Chae-in to reprimand the brown-haired man for his words. Days later, Jihoon received a notification on his phone and realized that his one-time extra acting career was not going to be so one-time. On the internet, people would rely on anonymity to harass others, but gladly, Jihoon and Chae-in only became a wholesome meme for people. Jihoon was glad that that was how their popularity was growing, but was still worried that it was growing at all. He assumed that it was going to die down by the time he would present his speech that day. However, that was not the case. Jihoon finished his speech and set aside time for questions, and suddenly everyone's hands were up as everyone in the crowd stared in admiration. He asked what the question was of one of the people in the crowd, only to be asked if he was the dad from the wholesome memes circulating the internet. Jihoon feigned ignorance as the rest of the students gossiped in excitement, complimenting his beauty. He tried to tell the students that he would only take questions related to artificial intelligence, but the students would continue asking him questions related to the scene. Jihoon told everyone to settle down as he admitted that he was an extra with his daughter in the K-drama, in the hopes that that would calm everyone down about the subject. But he only caused an uproar of excitement. Unlike his expectations, the wholesome meme was increasing in popularity every day. The next day, Chang-soo told Jihoon that he had become an internet star overnight. One of the students took a picture of him at the speech presentation yesterday and wrote a post about it, gaining many likes and comments. A couple women had recognized Jihoon and walked up to him to ask for an autograph, to which he did reluctantly, wondering why and how all of this was happening to him. Then, a couple people turned into a crowd of people. Jihoon asked his friend why people were coming for him instead of his daughter, but Chang-soo couldn't give a serious answer. A phone was heard ringing and Jihoon picked it up, realizing it was Yina who texted him. She had told him that Chae-in's birthday was in 4 days, which had caused a wave of fear to wash over him. They finally got the group of people to leave, as they discussed how Jihoon didn't have anything prepared for Chae-in's birthday. Jihoon was disappointed in himself for not even having asked his daughter's own birthday, not even remembering celebrating his own birthday. Chang-soo suggested that Jihoon should get on that, as most people would celebrate birthdays while a kid was young, but Jihoon still didn't know what to do. The brown-haired man wondered if Jihoon could just ask for birthday ideas on the internet. However, Jihoon was about to beat up Chang-soo again for those words. He sighed as he didn't want his face to be on the internet in the first place. And Chang-soo suggested that Jihoon should just ask the girl directly what she wanted, or to just take her shopping and pay attention to anything that interested her. And that second idea is what Jihoon did, taking Chae-in to the mall. He asked his daughter if she wanted to go shopping, but the girl was confused as to why they would do that since she had already gotten many clothes for herself already. But Jihoon corrected that it was for him, keeping the lie up. She decided that a shopping day wouldn't be a bad time since the girl liked anything that her father wanted to do, and said that it would be a good time to buy her birthday gift while they were out. Jihoon agreed until he realized what Chae-in said and was in disbelief, wondering if she caught on already. The little girl started to think out loud about what she should choose as her birthday gift, while her father is left distraught that he couldn't keep it a surprise. Not that he expected himself to have done a good job of that anyway. His thoughts were interrupted by Chae-in asking him what Aunt Yeji's son would like as a gift. Jihoon was confused until the girl explained that she was talking about Dr. Cha from the research lab, assuming that he was buying her son a gift since it was almost his birthday as well. He asked if she was friends with Aunt Yeji, to which the girl claimed that there was no one in the lab she wasn't friends with. Jihoon's sweat dropped, but was now hopeful again that he could still surprise Chae-in with a gift. Later in the day, Jihoon and Chae-in went shopping together. He witnessed a mother reprimanding her child for throwing a tantrum over a toy, something that parents usually go through when shopping with a kid. So he wondered why Chae-in wasn't like that at all. The girl was focused on getting a gift for Dr. Cha's son, and settled on a popular toy, the Silicon Man, which her father insisted on buying himself. Jihoon asked his daughter if she really didn't want to buy anything, but the girl said that it was fine and that she could just sell her stocks to buy it. He started to wonder if the girl he was talking to was a kid or actually an adult, as he stared in confusion, trying to understand the girl. She noticed his stares and thought that Jihoon couldn't focus on his own purchases because she was so pretty. Her father playing along in relief that the girl didn't catch him lying. Chae-in told him that they should come back to the mall when he remembered what he was going to buy and should just go home since her legs hurt. Ji-hoon felt defeated since they didn't figure out a gift for the little girl in the end. But his worries were lessened when he knew that there were only 2 days left till her birthday. Just before they left the mall, Chae-in showed interest in the food corner, making Ji-hoon remember how the girl always liked his cooking. She ran up to the different ingredients and asked her father if he could make her rice balls again, to which Ji-hoon agreed to. They finally went home, Ji-hoon knowing exactly what Chae-in's surprise gift would be: food. He scoured the internet for the best recipes in order to know what to make his daughter for her birthday. Planning to practice at Chang-soo's house during the next 2 days, making amu rice as the main dish and rice balls as the side. The next day at Chang-soo's place, everyone stared in awe at Ji-hoon's cooking, mouths watering. Chang-soo joked that it could just look good but taste bad, offending Ji-hoon as he told everyone to try it. Everyone stared at the food in disbelief after trying it and wondered when Ji-hoon got so good at cooking. Chang-soo mentioned that Chae-in would love it, guaranteed. They started to beg Ji-hoon to come cook at their place from now on, but he was more than okay with not doing that. He still enjoyed the fact that his friends found the food good, and hoped to make it just like that the next day. However, his main problem was the fact that Chae-in didn't sleep in the mornings. She would usually wake up earlier than him, so he set an alarm to wake up at 5 a.m., hoping that would be early enough. Ji-hoon finally went to bed and knew that he would make the best birthday meal the next day. Or so he thought. Once Ji-hoon woke up, the sun shone on him as he heard cooking noises from the kitchen. Wait, cooking noises? Ji-hoon looked at the time on his phone and realized that it was 8 in the morning, hours later than when he planned on waking up. He shot up and jumped out of bed in worries of spoiling his surprise gift and ran into the kitchen. Ji-hoon found Chae-in at the counter, cutting up some food. She greeted her father, but the sight of the girl holding a knife made Ji-hoon scared as he tried to scold Chae-in about how playing with knives and fire were too dangerous for her, even if she was different from the other kids. Chae-in told him that she wasn't playing around, confusing the man until Ji-hoon noticed all the food that was already made. He wondered who cooked all the food, staring at it in awe, until his friends and co-workers walked into the room from the bathroom. Ji-hoon felt as though he was dreaming after seeing people randomly come out of his bathroom. But the woman told him to ask that day's main character about what was happening if he was really so confused. Chae-in walked up to her father and hugged him happily, explaining that she prepared all the food for him for her birthday, since it was thanks to Ji-hoon and Yina that she was born. He asked Chae-in why she would do that for him when it was her own birthday, but the girl continued to insist that it was because of him that she was in the world. Ji-hoon looked down at the smiling girl, feeling touched by her actions, as the woman in the room explained that she was there to help Chae-in safely use a knife and stovetop. He asked if that woman cooked it, but she corrected that it was Chae-in who did it all by herself. Ji-hoon's coworker had explained that the little girl was practicing cooking with the woman for a week at the lab when he wasn't there, making Ji-hoon realize that everyone in that room knew Chae-in's birthday way before he did. They were most worried about Ji-hoon waking up too early, but fortunately he was dead asleep, causing Ji-hoon to feel embarrassed about being seen sleeping. One of his friends chimed in and said that the plan went well, and that he brought cake for Ji-hoon to eat with Chae-in. And Ji-hoon's coworker told him that he didn't need to come into the lab that day and could go out with Chae-in for her birthday. Everyone quickly bidded their goodbyes and left the duo alone, as Chae-in told her father that they should eat the food before it gets cold. He stared at the food with an unreadable expression in silence, making the little girl worried about her father until she realized that he was crying. Her concern only grew until Ji-hoon explained that it had been a long time since he had gotten a birthday meal, thanking the girl for her actions. It really was a fortune that Chae-in was there in his life. After that amazing day with Chae-in, Ji-hoon went to go see Professor Bak-nai. She heard about the birthday meal and Ji-hoon wondered if the whole school knew about it, to which the professor laughed and explained that everyone was always all ears to things that related to Chae-in. Ji-hoon wondered why Professor Bak came to see him, as she reminded the man that she was looking for schools. The Korean National University of Education has a talented children's learning facility for kids like Chae-in, and she wanted Ji-hoon to think about enrolling Chae-in into it. Ji-hoon tried to remind the professor that the little girl was a research model at Professor Choi's lab, but Professor Bak was fully aware of Chae-in's position and had already talked about the situation with the old man. Ji-hoon felt upset over the thought of someone else trying to plan out his child's future without his input, and asked for clarification, but Professor Bak apologized for the word choice, and explained that Chae-in was going to need to be enrolled in school by next year according to the law, and would best fit an education better than a normal elementary one. Ji-hoon began to realize how little of a choice he had, and started to worry that he would have to be separated from Chae-in after all. Ji-hoon explained to the professor that it wouldn't be something that Chae-in would be able to accept either, especially so suddenly. That was when Professor Bak mentioned about their own school having a talented youth facility as well, and how Chae-in would be able to join despite her lack of education level because the facility was under Professor Bak's jurisdiction. She put time aside to talk with the president and asked him to allow Chae-in entry into the facility because of how special she was, surprising Ji-hoon by the amount of effort the professor was putting into the situation. Professor Bak explained that the situation was the reason why she wanted to meet with him, to talk about Chae-in's fall semester. There was another case in another school where a student started in November as a 6th grader and graduated the following year. So the professor had confidence that Chae-in could do that too, since her math skills had already been proven. However, there just weren't enough titles to prove that officially. Ji-hoon was asked with finding a good title that would be helpful to Chae-in and take advantage of exceptional clauses to enroll the girl as a 6th grader. Titles were good at attracting people's attention, even if it was a person that they haven't heard of before, meaning that it would be helpful for Chae-in in case she wanted to do anything regarding her education in the future. Ji-hoon decided that it would probably be best to follow Professor Bak's opinion and agreed with the woman, thanking her for the hard work she had put into the situation. He admitted that there were times that he would wonder if it was okay for him to interfere with Chae-in's future, but Professor Bak told him to not say things like that, as he was Chae-in's only father, and that there wouldn't be anything in the future where Ji-hoon's opinion wouldn't be taken into account. Ji-hoon agreed to do so, but he still couldn't help but worry that he wasn't being a good father, especially with Chae-in's upcoming enrollment. Later in the day, Ji-hoon went to go talk with Professor Choi to complain about not involving him with the decision. The old man apologized and said that it would never happen again, but asked Ji-hoon if he wanted to hear the excuse for not talking to him yet. He explained that it was due to competition, as the results of the tests were leaked to the public, causing many schools to want to take in Chae-in. Ji-hoon was surprised, but thought that it would be pointless unless Chae-in wanted to go there. But Professor Choi said that it would have been a hassle anyway, because of the requests to meet the two, which is why the old man talked with Professor Bak and the president all in the span of 24 hours. Ji-hoon realized how little time had passed to make all these decisions and apologized for raising his voice at Professor Choi. But the old man understood Ji-hoon's feelings and promised again that he wouldn't have something like this happen ever again. They both thanked each other, and Professor Choi said he was going to look forward to continuing working with Ji-hoon, since Chae-in would only stay with the lab if he was there. Those words caused Ji-hoon to freeze and ask the man if he knew about those buy one get one free sales at grocery stores. Professor Choi said he knew about them, and Ji-hoon started to compare himself and Chae-in to that image, the old man finishing off the metaphor in agreement with no hesitation. Ji-hoon felt offended since he was on his path to a doctorate and asked if Professor Choi could change his mind, but the old man immediately refuted the request and told Ji-hoon to go. Ji-hoon really felt as though the title he earned at the end of all of his efforts of university was Chae-in's buy one get one, making him even less confident at being able to give opinions regarding her future. While Ji-hoon was wallowing in his misery, he had gotten unexpected news one day. Professor Choi told him that he wanted Ji-hoon to attend a symposium held in Boston with him. Ji-hoon wondered if he would really be able to go, since he had only recently came to the lab, but the old man insisted, saying that he was too old to joke about that kind of thing. Excitedly asking why he was chosen, Ji-hoon learned that his paper related to the main theme of the symposium was decently written, causing him to feel achieved in doing something valuable in the lab. Professor Choi let the man know that the trip would be 7 days long, making Ji-hoon wonder what he was going to do with Chae-in. But the old man interrupted his thoughts by saying that he should also pack Chae-in some cute clothes for the tourist spots if they have time. Ji-hoon was confused, until the old man asked him if he thought they were going to leave Chae-in behind. Chae-in walked into the room and asked her father if he was planning on going to the United States without her, Professor Choi proceeding to laugh, as he explained that his AI was going to be modeled after Chae-in, which is why he couldn't just leave the girl out. The plane ticket for Chae-in was covered by the lab, so Ji-hoon wouldn't have to worry about the expense. However, this made him realize that he was only going on the trip because Chae-in wouldn't have gone otherwise. Ji-hoon started to believe that all he had done till this point was pointless. Studying hard to beat the competition in high school, then again in university, then devoting himself to his studies in grad school while being humiliated by Dong-ho. Yet after all of those 28 years, Ji-hoon had somehow ended up as a +1 to a 7-year-old genius. Chae-in noticed her dad kneeling on the ground and told Professor Choi that he was being weird, the old man staring in disappointment at how weak Ji-hoon looked. Professor Choi walked over to Ji-hoon and told him to suck it up, claiming that he was only joking and apologized for it. The old man insisted that Ji-hoon's paper was really good, and that he was chosen because it would be hard otherwise for Ji-hoon to go overseas, once he would get into his professional research. Professor Choi reminded the man that it was hard being funny at his age and went to leave the room, telling Ji-hoon to ask Chae-in if he didn't believe him. The little girl looked up at her father happily and complimented him for his skill of writing, telling him that she was proud and that she wanted him to continue teaching her in the future. Ji-hoon chuckled and agreed that he was going to continue being a dependable supporting figure to the girl. 2 weeks later, they finally arrived at the airport and were both excited, especially Ji-hoon since it would be his first plane flight. A woman walked up to the duo and asked if they were the father and child from the wholesome meme from the K-drama. A kid popped out from behind the woman's legs and pulled out a large lollipop to give to Chae-in. The woman explained that her son wanted to talk to the girl, and Chae-in took the gift with a smile, thanking the boy. Once the strangers left, Chae-in held up the lollipop to her father and told him that it was her first candy from a boyfriend. Her words surprising Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon then realized that once the girl enters school, she would likely make friends and probably prioritize them over him. He didn't know how he was going to react to that and knew that he should prepare himself for that time. As they walked off to their flight, another imagination crossed his mind of his daughter finding a boy in the US and promising to marry him in the future. He shouted out loud about how he didn't want that, surprising Chae-in as a fire burned in Ji-hoon about how he was going to protect his daughter from any boy that would come her way. They had finally gotten onto the plane and found their seats, the plane having already taken off. The weather was predicted to be calm, yet there was a chance of turbulence. Chae-in looked out the window with excitement and asked her father if it was his first time on the plane. He confirmed it with a blush and asked the same question back, to which Chae-in admitted that she had been on many planes before, since her mom had many planes back at home. The little girl started to explain the many planes and jets that Yina and her family had, and how Chae-in had been on said vehicles. Ji-hoon was once again bewildered by how rich Yina's family was, but decided that it had to be a lie since kids around Chae-in's age were supposed to lie or exaggerate often. The little girl looked at her father with irritation and asked him if he didn't believe her again, making Ji-hoon wonder how the little girl caught on so fast. Chae-in pulled a cover over herself and started to throw a tantrum about how she hated her father, and gave him the silent treatment anytime he would try to talk to her. Ji-hoon looked in disappointment, thinking it was unfair that he was receiving this treatment considering that it was really hard to believe in the first place. Dating a rich person with a kid who was as smart as Einstein? Yeah, right. Even if Ji-hoon's life was a fantasy novel, the readers would claim a lack of realism. Now, the priority was to figure out how to appease the little girl. Ji-hoon remembered how, in the past, he could tickle Chae-in to make her feel better and forget about what she was mad about. He tried to do that with her right now, but she reprimanded him by telling him that he shouldn't be loud on a plane. Ji-hoon realized his mistake and knew that he should genuinely apologize for his actions. He did as so, claiming that he would believe her no matter what from now on. But Chae-in knew that he was lying because she knows what he was thinking. She continued to hold the cover over her and claimed that she would stay mad until he would apologize for real. And he continued to beg the girl to forgive him throughout the flight. The plane had been shaking for half an hour, and everyone on the plane started to worry that they were going to crash and/or die. Ji-hoon's stomach was going wild because of motion sickness, but he still needed to get Chae-in to feel better. The little girl noticed her father's problem and decided that she would end her tantrum even if she was still mad, putting a hand on her father in worry. Suddenly, it felt as though Ji-hoon's headache and nausea had stopped out of nowhere, causing him to realize the concern of other passengers about the turbulence that was happening on the plane. Ji-hoon looked to his daughter in worry and asked if she was scared, but the girl reassured that she was okay, causing Ji-hoon to smile and tell her to not worry. However, the turbulence had gotten even worse, and people on the plane started to scream in fear. Ji-hoon was also scared, but he was worried about how to reassure his daughter about the situation, deciding to ask if she wanted to pray. He reminded her about the last time they prayed for the weather to get better at the amusement park, and how they could do the same for this situation. Chae-in looked excited, and the two started to chant for the weather to get better and stop causing turbulence on the plane. Little did Ji-hoon know that the girl was going off script from the prayer in order to cast her magic and change the weather. The only problem was, it wasn't working this time. Lightning struck as the two hugged each other, the girl left in confusion as a situation like this had never happened before. Yina had taught Chae-in many things. The dragon tongue's power came from the speaker's will, and naturally a person's will would get stronger with age. But that would also mean even when young, as long as there was enough will, a person could be just as powerful. However, there were side effects if the dragon's tongue was used rashly, and Chae-in's mother warned her to try not to use it until she was fully grown. Except the little girl thought that now was the time to use that ability. All she needed was a strong will. The girl started to calm herself down and focus on her senses. Calling upon all the listening beings, she ordered the weather to disperse, and finally, the chaos had ended. Ji-hoon was proud that their prayer had seemingly worked, Chae-in also feeling glad herself, but the little girl wondered why it hadn't worked earlier. She was also worried about the side effects, but decided to dismiss the thought as Chae-in believed that her mother would take care of everything if something did go wrong. Professor Choi told all the students to get a good night's rest for the symposium the next day, and left them to themselves. Her father looked out the window and was filled with awe at the sight of the city in the nighttime, in disbelief that he was really in the US. Chae-in was still mad at him for not believing her earlier, but the girl knew her father wouldn't sleep early that night and wanted to make sure that he wouldn't be tired for the next day. She used her powers briefly and the man suddenly felt tired, telling his daughter that he would go wash up before sleeping. The girl watched her father walk off, laughing about how she was the one taking care of her father so well. However, what Chae-in didn't notice until then were the consequences of her actions. Professor Choi was impressed to see how Ji-hoon looked as though he had a good night's sleep, explaining to the man how the symposium was a place where the world's greatest scholars were gathered. The old man told Ji-hoon to be on his toes as Chae-in cheered for her father. Suddenly, an ominous feeling washed over the girl, and she decided that she would lie to Ji-hoon that she was still too sleepy and supposedly wanted to rest in the hotel. She bid her goodbyes to the two men and walked back to the hotel, still bothered by how her power didn't work the previous day. At the symposium, the two men were taking notes on what the presenters were saying. Ji-hoon was having some trouble due to not feeling confident about his English. However, he knew that listening to the presenters filled him with astonishment at their knowledge and a desire to want to be a presenter himself one day. Professor Choi noticed the glint in Ji-hoon's eyes and smiled, knowing how much Ji-hoon was going to grow into an intelligent man. After the symposium was over, people were chatting with each other about the presentation some people gave. Professor Choi was talking with some people in English while Ji-hoon stood by, feeling dizzy from the amount of English going around. The old man ushered him to come over and introduced Ji-hoon to the people around him, saying that Ji-hoon was the father of the model used for the AI that Professor Choi would be presenting on. Everyone started to bombard Ji-hoon with English questions, as Professor Choi gave a look of "good luck" and left Ji-hoon to walk on his own. After being insisted to answer the questions, Ji-hoon decided to get out of his comfort zone and give it his best, proceeding to reply to everyone with the English that he knew. Meanwhile, Chae-in was in the hotel begging for her mom to come out of hiding and help her figure out what was going on. A being of light appeared in the air to remind Chae-in that she was told not to use the dragon tongue recklessly. The little girl tried to give the excuse that it was for Ji-hoon, but Chae-in's mom told the girl that this was why she didn't send her before, and said that she was going to start being prepared for when Chae-in caused more trouble in the future. Yina asked her daughter if she remembered when the dragon tongue would lose its efficacy, to which the girl said that she remembered, causing Yina to be even more disappointed in her daughter for doing something despite knowing the consequences. Chae-in gave the excuse that she just forgot and apologized, giving a hug to her mother's spirit-like form for forgiveness. Yina looked down at Chae-in, surprised to hear a laugh instead of crying after what she had done, and decided to forgive her under one condition, that Chae-in would be responsible for everything that would happen after that. Chae-in's mother would forgive her on the condition that the little girl would be responsible for everything that would come from her actions. Chae-in was confused as to what her mother was talking about until she started to shake in concern about there being something that was happening because of her using her dragon tongue. Yina looked away and feigned ignorance about the situation, causing the little girl to worry even more about what she could have missed. The platinum-haired girl started to cry and jumped at her mother, asking for help. Yina disappeared for a moment to prevent Chae-in from grabbing her, and told the girl that she needed to learn to be responsible for the power she had. Chae-in started to throw a tantrum, but her mother reminded her that she was still too young to go out into the world and told her that she deserved the situation she was in, causing Chae-in to cry even more. Ji-hoon and Professor Choi finally came back from the symposium and after-party feeling great. The old man asked Ji-hoon if he was appreciative that he didn't help, to which the excited grad student confirmed and was happy that he had gained the confidence to be able to do things himself. Giving a quick bow, Ji-hoon thanked Professor Choi as the professor laughed, and told Ji-hoon to bring Chae-in along next time. As they walked down the hall, Professor Choi reminded him that he was not just Chae-in's sidekick, until their chat was interrupted by the sound of Chae-in crying. They both whipped their heads around with concern as Professor Choi told Ji-hoon to go check out what the problem was. Chae-in continued to cry for her mother's help, but Yina insisted that the girl should learn that the world was a scary place. Yina heard the footsteps of Ji-hoon and started to disappear, claiming that it was still not time for them to see each other again and bid her goodbye to Chae-in. Ji-hoon ran into the room and asked his daughter what was wrong, and the girl jumped into her father's arms, crying about how her mother had scolded her. He was confused at the situation, knowing that Yina had not been answering his calls, but theorized that Chae-in was just crying over a bad dream with her mother. He leaned down and gave comforting words to the little girl about how he would get scolded on her behalf, telling Chae-in not to cry anymore. The girl stared at her father before giving a big smile and happily hugged her father. However, she was still confused as to what her mother was talking about. Chae-in internally made a challenge against her mother and vowed that she would continue using her powers if it was for her father's sake. A few days later, at the American Meteorological Office, one of the desk workers had told the boss that there was a problem with how a tornado was starting to form near California. The boss was confused considering it was rare for tornadoes to appear in the West and asked what level it was at. The woman said that it was EF3, causing the man to quickly turn around in concern as the office would need to sound an alert and order an evacuation. But the woman corrected that there was an error and that the tornado's power could be as powerful as the max, EF5. This meant that everything in Silicon Valley could be destroyed. The wind whirled around the city that Ji-hoon and Chae-in stood in, Ji-hoon noticing how the weather of California was the complete opposite compared to Boston. He was hoping to be able to bring Chae-in sightseeing, but the plans were going to be changed. The little girl was in thought, wondering when something bad would happen ever since she last talked with her mother. Chae-in had a thought that Yina could have been lying, and another thought of concern because of the bad weather. She decided to dismiss her worry and hugged her father as two strangers walk up to the two and complimented Chae-in's cuteness, recognizing her as the AI model for Professor Choi. They all had a nice chat for a moment, until an alarm started to blare through the streets, alerting everyone and causing concern. A voice from a speaker loudly announced that a tornado was approaching the Ano Nuevo State Park, warning everyone to evacuate. Everyone started to scream as they were led to a building for safety. Professor Choi told Ji-hoon to follow him so they could shelter themselves in the basement of the hotel. Chae-in was starting to worry, but Ji-hoon reassured her that he would protect her if anything happened. The little girl hoped that the tornado was just a natural occurrence and believed that the shelter should be able to withstand it. A thought crossed her mind about the tornado possibly being a side effect of the dragon tongue that Yina had told her about, causing Chae-in to feel a determination to want to do something about the situation. Back at the meteorological office, people started to notice that the tornado was destroying buildings made of concrete, which had brought up concerns of its power. The blonde man was worried about how they wouldn't be able to send rescue teams into the area, and wondered when the tornado would die down. The answer to that question would not be found, as the woman next to him said the scientists could not figure that out themselves. This man, the governor, told this woman to estimate the potential damages and to keep all available personnel on standby. Once she went to leave the room, he looked back at the tornado on the graph and prayed to his god to protect everyone from the worst disaster ever seen in California's history. Meanwhile, in the underground hotel shelter, people crowded in the room and Ji-hoon stared at his phone in worry, as the tornado seemed to be more powerful than a regular one, even at EF5. The lights suddenly turned off, and people started to scream in fear and pray to their god. Chae-in looked up at her father with worry, but Ji-hoon reassured her once again that everything would be fine. However, Ji-hoon himself was terrified. He needed to stay strong for Chae-in's sake, and was going to do everything that he could to make sure she was safe. Everyone around kept shaking and crying while Chae-in was internally calling out to her mother to help them, angry by the lack of response. After more waiting, the little girl decided that she was going to take control of the situation and deal with the tornado without her mother's help. Ji-hoon was confused at his daughter's behavior, but the girl reassured him, sweat dropping. Chae-in hugged her father and was frustrated, not knowing how she was going to get rid of the tornado without Ji-hoon finding out, or without leaving a trace. She couldn't just use the dragon tongue again, as it would just accumulate somewhere else. So Chae-in figured out one thing that she could do, and started to gather up her senses and send it out toward the tornado. Her spirit-like form floated up and outside of the shelter, and Chae-in looked around for the core of the tornado, quickly realizing the dark ball of energy inside of it. The little girl called out to the core and told it to come to her, but all it did was send lightning towards Chae-in. She was angry that it wasn't listening, telling it one more time to surrender to her before she would destroy it. However, it still didn't budge. This had left the girl with no other choice, and Chae-in summoned two large, glowing hands with the intention of getting rid of it herself. Chae-in stood opposed from the tornado and gave a last warning to it to come over while she was still being nice. Somehow, it seemed as though it was finally listening to the girl, and Chae-in started to try and absorb those side effects. Yet the energy of the core was extremely big, creating a struggle. Suddenly, the core reacted to this action and a black splash of energy formed in Chae-in's chest, the girl grunting in pain as she continued trying to absorb the tornado. After a while, the rumbling above the shelter had stopped, confusing everyone in the room. Ji-hoon was worried by its sudden disappearance, but his thoughts were interrupted by Chae-in looking up at him with a pale face, trying to tell him that she thinks the tornado was gone. Ji-hoon was worried as to why his daughter looked exhausted. but Chaeden dismissed it and insisted that it was fine because the tornado was gone. Professor Choi spoke up and agreed with the girl, while people around started to get up and go out to look. Ji-hoon decided to go with and told the old man to look after Chaeden. He was still in disbelief that such a large tornado could just disappear in an instant. But as he walked outside with the other people, they all stood in shock as they saw the clear sky shining down on the damaged city. The tornado destroyed everything in its path, yet it was gone like it never had existed in the first place. Later, after everyone had left the shelter, Ji-hoon was on a call with his worried mother, whom he had to reassure that he and Chaeden were both fine and unharmed. His mother mentioned that the tornado must have been extremely powerful if it was reported all the way to Korea as well. She was right. The whole world was taken aback by this unexpected tornado, causing people from around the Earth to talk about the event, especially about its mysterious disappearance considering its monstrous power. There were some who witnessed such a phenomenon that couldn't be explained by science and claimed that a transcendent being had intervened. However, while the tornado was gone, the damages weren't. But it was still a good thing that no one had died during the disaster. Professor Choi told the students that the conference from Stanford University was cancelled, which meant that they would have to move up in schedule and go to their next thing in LA. The old man would also give everyone free time during their time in LA after the disaster that had happened so people could relax. When they had all arrived and found their places to stay at, Ji-hoon laid in bed exhausted after the situation. He turned over to check on his daughter again, but Chaeden reassured him that she was okay after he had hugged her. Since they had the whole day off the next day, Ji-hoon told the girl that he was going to take her to many fun places. She expressed her excitement as Ji-hoon went to sleep, and the girl proceeded to do her nightly chants on her father. Chaeden tried to use her magic, yet it seemed to not work. She tried again and again, but still nothing. The little girl wondered what happened to her powers and wanted to talk to her mother, but she couldn't reach Yina because she couldn't use the Dragon Tongue ability. Chaeden wondered if she was no longer able to use the ability and started to cry, causing Ji-hoon to wake up with concern. He thought that she must have had a nightmare and comforted the girl, Chaeden asking if he could sing her a lullaby. Ji-hoon did so and sang for his daughter, as he hugged her and Chaeden quickly fell asleep in seconds. He held the little girl close, and wished that Yina would be there for the girl during times like these. He planned to make the girl really happy the next day to compensate for her mother's share. However, the next day, Chaeden was already awake and looked down at her father, knowing what would have happened to him without her powers, as she asked if her exhausted father was okay. Ji-hoon wondered if the tornado made him feel nervous enough to be bedridden for that morning, turning over to apologize to his daughter, and telling her that they will go out for the afternoon. The little girl looked at him with worry, telling him that it was okay to wait, but Chaeden felt frustrated that she couldn't use her powers to make him feel better faster, wondering when she would be able to use them again. Chaeden was currently experiencing a rebound effect, where she was stuck in a state of energy depletion after absorbing all of the side effects of the tornado, meaning that Chaeden was unable to use her magic until all of the energy was digested. Once she finally remembered what her mother had told her, the girl figured that it would probably not take too long until her powers came back, but she was still angry at her supposedly selfish mother. After the break, Ji-hoon felt more refreshed to finally hang out with his daughter and got up to stretch. He looked toward his excited child and was bewildered at how resilient she seemed to be after not seeming to be in a good condition earlier. Ji-hoon happily asked if Chaeden wanted to choose where they would go, and she jumped up to sit next to him and look at the Los Angeles pamphlet. He thought that the little girl would likely choose one of the many famous amusement parks in the area, but she didn't take interest in any of them, and instead wanted to go to Koreatown or Chinatown. Ji-hoon tried to tell the girl that it was just a street without any real sights to see, but the platinum-haired girl explained that she liked walking. He wasn't sure that Chaeden would enjoy it, but he decided to go with it as that was what his daughter wanted. They finally went outside and visited Chinatown first, as it was closer to the hotel. There were a lot of people in the streets, but Ji-hoon was glad that Chaeden looked happy, surprised at her enjoyment by just the looking around the area. The girl suddenly took an interest in all of the street food, making her father wonder if this was the only reason why she was there. After they had gotten their food, Chaeden told Ji-hoon that she wanted to go to Koreatown next. He sweat-dropped, asking how she would enjoy it since it would be similar to their hometown, but she explained that she would still have fun wherever there are people. Ji-hoon was still confused until the girl explained that she enjoyed watching people go about their lives and be human, making her wonder what life they lived and what they were thinking, especially with the amounts of people who would have probably left their homes to visit America. Ji-hoon was surprised by the answer, making him wonder if his daughter wanted to come here to see people who were similar to herself. The girl told him that he should try thinking like her once, and Ji-hoon didn't feel opposed to that idea, knowing that he had never really taken a chance to take a break and think about other people's lives. After what Chae-in said, Ji-hoon vowed to himself that he wanted to see and experience more with more people. A woman walked up to the two and started to speak to them in Chinese, asking if she could take a picture together with Ji-hoon's daughter. Ji-hoon was dumbfounded, wondering why the woman was talking to him in Chinese, especially since he didn't think he looked Chinese. Chae-in took control of the situation and spoke for Ji-hoon, telling the woman, in Chinese as well, to speak in English, as her father only knew Korean and English. The woman switched to English and apologized, as Chae-in told her father that the woman wanted to take pictures with her to make memories on her trip. The stranger gave her phone to Ji-hoon and let him take the picture, but it didn't seem to satisfy the woman. She decided to do an example of a good picture by telling Ji-hoon to stand with his child, and she would take a picture of them instead. Ji-hoon and Chae-in both looked at how good the picture was as this woman started to chat with Ji-hoon, asking him what brought him to the US. He explained that he was on a similar trip like the woman was, and that he and Chae-in were on their way to Koreatown. The woman said that she was also going to Koreatown, and finally introduced herself as Maria, asking Ji-hoon if they could spend the day together. Ji-hoon felt a little uncomfortable with the idea of hanging out with a stranger, asking his daughter if she was okay with it. But Chae-in seemed fine with it, since Maria didn't seem like a bad person. He agreed with that comment about Maria not seeming like a bad person, thinking that it was probably common to make friends with strangers while traveling. Ji-hoon accepted the handshake and introduced himself, believing that this experience while traveling will surely yield good memories. Once they arrived at Koreatown, the two adults made conversation with one another. Maria explained how she had been to school in many different countries and asked where Ji-hoon had went to school, to which he said it was all spent in Korea. The girl told Ji-hoon about how she had a big interest in Korea, because the situation in Korea in the past was similar to what happened to Serbia, her home country, and that she was going to take Korea as a role model to revive Serbia. Ji-hoon wondered if Maria had political ambitions and if she was from a rich family, considering her skill in foreign languages and experience studying abroad. Suddenly, the woman asked about where Ji-hoon's wife was, but Ji-hoon said that she was somewhere else, leaving him to be able to travel alone with Chae-in, which felt nice to him. Chae-in admitted that she didn't want to see her mother, surprising Ji-hoon by her change of answer from yesterday, as she vowed to not talk to her mother anymore. Maria asked if Chae-in studied abroad since she was good at foreign languages, but he admitted that this was the first time he and his daughter traveled abroad. The woman was still impressed by her skill as Ji-hoon started to brag about Chae-in's intelligence, Maria feeling envious. She realized the time and asked Ji-hoon if he wanted to see a baseball game, explaining that she was already planning to see the LA Dodgers that day. He didn't know much about baseball, but Maria was okay with teaching him about it when they were there. Ji-hoon had thought about it for a moment, wondering when else there would be a time to see American baseball live, thinking about how it would likely be a good experience for Chae-in. He asked his daughter if she was interested, to which the little girl agreed, and all of them set off to the stadium. They sat in the seats of the audience as they watched the baseball game play out. 2 outs already in such a short amount of time. Maria started to explain the rules of the game and how it was supposed to be played, and how the bases and out system worked. Ji-hoon asked Chae-in if it was her first time watching baseball, and the little girl affirmed that it was, glad that Maria was there to help her understand it. Ji-hoon was glad that his daughter was having fun, and that he, himself, was also having fun, since he was worried before the game that he wouldn't enjoy it. A home run happened, and a person behind the 3 of them caught the ball as everyone else cheered. The atmosphere in the stands had also felt great to Ji-hoon, as he felt all of the stress in his body being released. Suddenly, Chae-in pointed somewhere as she asked what something was. He looked over and saw the screen was showing a kiss cam, immediately shielding the child's eyes from it. The little girl was wondering what was so dangerous about it, but Ji-hoon was mostly worried about the kiss cam going toward him and Maria. Unfortunately, his worst fears had come true. Maria's sweat dropped, wondering what they should do as the people around the stadium cheered and chanted for Ji-hoon to kiss her. The woman next to him tapped his shoulder and said that they should just get it over with, Maria already seeming ready to kiss him. People continued to cheer and lips started to approach Ji-hoon as he wondered what he was supposed to do. He thought he might have gone crazy, especially since he was married, but it seemed unavoidable and started to move closer to Maria. However, he stopped in place, knowing that he wasn't ready for it. Suddenly, people in the audience were surprised to see Chae-in kiss her father on the cheek in Maria's place. Everyone cheered in happiness at the cute sight as the little girl hugged her father with a groan. Ji-hoon asked her if she was feeling shy, but that wasn't the case. Chae-in looked up at her father with a dark look as she asked him why he tried to kiss a girl who was not her mom, causing him to sweat in a panic while he was scolded by his own daughter. Ji-hoon started to imagine the face of Yina reacting to him almost kissing another woman, scared by the image and dramatically screaming in fear. The little girl changed her attitude and quickly reassured him that she wouldn't tell her mother because she trusted him. However, the reason why she wasn't going to tell her mother was because the little girl was still upset over Yina not helping them when they needed it. She just wanted to take revenge. After the baseball game, everyone had left the stadium to look at fireworks that were happening outside. Maria told Jihoon that she had a great time and Jihoon agreed, almost wishing that he could have stayed longer. The woman thanked Chaedin from saving her from an embarrassing situation and asked Jihoon if he used any social media. They exchanged their contact info and Maria quickly made her leave, hoping that Jihoon and his daughter would have more pleasant memories on their trip. Jihoon waved back and proceeded to ask Chaedin if they should go back to the hotel, to which the girl agreed. And so the both of them started to walk away. They already made a plan to visit Hollywood the next day, Jihoon immediately adding more and more onto the plan with excitement. But Chaedin wondered if her father was going to be okay, considering all the walking he'd been doing that day. He reassured her that he was okay, starting to brag about how fit he was, and how it supposedly wouldn't tire him to walk that much. The little girl was still worried since her father's stamina was only a result of her powers, and she wouldn't be able to use said powers that night. As expected, Jihoon woke up the next day feeling completely exhausted. He started to dramatically complain, longing for Hollywood and Universal Studios, while Chaedin sat there in pity, thinking that her father was exaggerating his sickness quite a bit. On their next trip, she was really going to need her recovery magic. And that was how Jihoon and Chaedin ended their first trip abroad. Once they finally came back to Korea, they brought souvenirs for Changsu and the others. One of them called the Eiffel Tower keychain tacky, while all three looked in disappointment, saying that Jihoon had bad taste. Chaedin admitted that she was the one who picked the charm out, and they all immediately changed their tune, saying that she had great taste. Jihoon held a bag behind his back before showing it to the three as a real souvenir gift for them, all three men staring in excitement and gratitude. They started to call Jihoon the best, while Jihoon stood there proudly. A question came up between them about Jihoon going to the LA Dodgers game, confusing Jihoon until they showed him that Chaedin kissing him on the cheek was trending on the internet. He was dumbfounded by the news and wondered why it was being shared around. During this, one of Jihoon's friends asked him if he was getting booked for a show, confusing him even more until he had gotten a call from someone. It was apparently employees from the YNG broadcasting show, causing Changsu and the others to look excited, but Jihoon rejected the offer and hung up. Changsu asked Jihoon why he turned it down, but he explained that he already had enough on his plate. Professor Choi walked into the lab and insisted that Jihoon really didn't have time, since he apparently had to go to a military camp soon. Jihoon jumped in surprise, as he didn't think that he had to go to the military for another 3 years. But Professor Choi said that it would be to his benefit. Chaedin asked her father what a military camp was and wanted to go with him, but the professor said that Chaedin would hear the details from her father later. Professor Choi took Jihoon away to talk to him, while Jihoon himself felt disappointed to have to think about the military so soon. The old man knew that Jihoon wanted to postpone it, but there was a reason of wanting to send him early. Jihoon was asked if he knew about the 4th Industrial Revolution being talked about a lot, confusing Jihoon as to how it had a connection with him going to the military. Professor Choi explained that in the past few years, the research topic of the school's research institute had finally gained momentum, and was being discussed nationally, meaning that their institute would be receiving a lot of support and social influence in the future. He wanted Jihoon to join the military because of how valuable he was to the research, not wanting him to be held back by military service in the future. Jihoon realized how Professor Choi made a good point, and thought about it for a bit, deciding that he would probably still have a few months' time before they cleared him. He let the professor know, only to find out that Professor Choi had already talked with people in order to get Jihoon to graduate early, and be sent to the camp next week, causing Jihoon to freeze in shock. After leaving the building, Chaedin was also surprised to hear the news, and wondered if he could just not go by choice. But Jihoon explained that he couldn't, even though he didn't want to himself. The little girl was still confused what the country would be protected from, until her father told her that their country was in a ceasefire with North Korea. Chaedin wondered if she could just destroy North Korea so her father wouldn't have to go, but that would mean she wouldn't be able to use her dragon speech for the rest of her life. She decided to throw a tantrum in hopes that it would change the situation, telling Jihoon that she wouldn't go to the education center if he went to the military. People around started to notice the commotion happening while Chaedin continued to be stubborn. Jihoon decided that he would tell Chaedin that he would grant her one wish if she did well in the educational institute. An idea of a wish came to mind and the girl stopped her crying, telling Jihoon that her wish was to go to college with her father. Jihoon wondered how that would be possible, but she already had a plan, somehow pulling out a whiteboard to explain it. He then asked about how tuition would be dealt with, but Chaeden already had another plan and would tell him later. The girl went back to being disappointed about her father being away for 4 weeks, but Jihoon had to comfort her once again and tell her that he would be back soon if she listened to her grandparents. They locked their pinky fingers together as Chaeden promised to do as told. And so a week passed in a frenzy. Jihoon had to process the documents for admission to the Gifted Education Institute, and he also had to attend the graduation ceremony. And then, his parents and daughter had to see Jihoon be sent off to the military. The little girl waved back with tears in her eyes as she told her father to take care of himself, while she knew that she was going to have to tolerate the time away, because that was the promise. And this would be the first time that Jihoon and Chaeden were separated for a long time. One night, the little girl was trying to sleep, but she couldn't because all she could think about was her dad. She made a promise, but Chaeden missed him and started to throw another tantrum, slamming her pillow on the bed. Chaeden wondered when she would be able to use her dragon speech again, and slammed her pillow one last time in a rage, until the girl noticed glowing energy forming around her, confusing her. She realized that her magic had finally come back to her, as Chaeden quickly asked the energy to take her to where her father was, the girl's body soon disappearing into thin air. A light appeared over the military camp as Chaeden found her father with no problem. She noticed his face and realized how tough the training must have been on him, quickly using her chance to make Jihoon feel better and stronger for the next day. The effects were instant as his exhausted face turned calm, and Chaeden decided to use her magic to see what had happened to him while he was away. She learned that Jihoon had been bragging about her to the other men at the camp, but Chaeden still wanted to talk directly with her father. A thought came into her mind after seeing memories of Jihoon at shooting training, and the girl thought that if her father got first place, he would likely be able to talk with her over the phone. However, it seemed as though Jihoon was really bad at shooting. So she got an idea and used her magic to make his gun be able to hit every target without missing. Wiping the sweat off of her forehead, Chaeden hoped that it would work and went back to her original place to wait for the effects. At the shooting range, all Jihoon could think about was winning the phone reward to be able to talk with his daughter. But he had a lot of worry considering that he couldn't hit a single target the previous day. When they had finally started to open fire, Jihoon realized that all the targets were being knocked down one by one in front of him. He was shocked and started to think that he may have a talent for shooting, giving him confidence that he would win. Later in the day, Chaeden was sitting in her bedroom, holding a phone in her hands while she waited for Jihoon to call her. It was taking some time, which made her worry for a moment, but the girl knew that it would be impossible for her father to not have gotten the reward. Suddenly, a call appeared on the phone and Chaeden immediately answered as the two of them happily greeted each other. Both of them had missed each other and admitted that they couldn't enjoy anything without the other there. Jihoon told the little girl that he loved her, and she repeated the same words back warmly. Her father felt content to have a conversation such as this after a long time, but unfortunately he didn't have much time left on the call and was told about how he had 30 seconds left. He quickly told Chaeden that he had to go and reminded her to listen to her grandparents. Once the call ended, the little girl looked disappointed after having such a short call and wished that she could do something to bring her father back sooner, but it would cause trouble if she did. In the meantime, Chaeden decided that she would continue training her magic and opened her laptop. After the return of Chaeden's powers, she had started training her spirit to avoid falling into a rebound again in the future. Just as a spirit's will affected the world, humans also had a subtle interference in the world. Chaeden would train herself to read this subtle will of the humans while they were over the internet, but it seemed as though her training was stagnant. In the end, instead, the little girl decided that she would focus on buying stocks. There was no place as intertwined with the darkness of human desire and willpower as the stock market. The market was a place where greed shined on its own. By using her powers, Chaeden could see the difference in the accumulation of greed in the stock market. By finding that difference, she would be able to improve the control over her powers while also increasing her money in her account, the balance having already skyrocketed tenfold. A fire of determination burned within Chaeden as she continued this stock research, so she could continue improving her mastery of her dragon speech. The month of September seemed to fly by faster than anyone would have expected, and finally, Jihoon had completed his military training and returned home. Chaeden was there to greet him with a hug, excited to see him again. Jihoon's father told him that the little girl looked gloomy the entire time without him, yet immediately had a bright expression the moment he called. Jihoon asked the girl if she wanted to go out to eat since it had been a while, but the girl wanted to eat his food as it was best in her eyes. Jihoon's parents asked him if he and Chaeden wanted to come with them to their hometown during the Chuseok holiday to meet their relatives again. This hometown was the same place that Chaeden and Jihoon had been to during New Year's, and Jihoon told the girl that they should go there to make traditional rice cakes, causing Chaeden to be ecstatic by the idea as it involved her father. A week later in Daejeon, everyone in the house was impressed by Chae-in's ability to make rice cakes. A female relative was in disbelief at how a wonderful girl like Chae-in came from Ji-hoon. But the elderly woman next to her reminded the woman that Ji-hoon had lost weight and become handsome. The woman admitted that seeing the duo made her want to have a child, causing the elderly woman to tease her that she was fine if she got grandchildren as a wedding gift. Ji-hoon's female relative told her mom to cut it off, as Chae-in was listening. But the elderly woman thought that it was okay since Chae-in was unlikely to remember much at 7 years old. Ji-hoon corrected them that Chae-in actually had a great memory, and his relatives started to ask how far she could remember. Chae-in proudly described the clothes that her aunt wore the previous New Year, surprising both relatives. A man walked in and tried to get Chae-in to look at a few cards and try to remember them in order, but the girl looked at them for a few seconds and was already ready to answer. She quickly repeated what she had seen, and that was another win for her. Ji-hoon's grandmother was impressed by how smart the girl was, and Ji-hoon told her about the fan club that the girl had. The brown-haired woman told everyone that they should play a game of poker and all bet 10,000 won each. Chae-in raised her hand excitedly with an interest to play poker as well, surprising her father as she explained that she saw how to play it on TV. The girl was very confident in her abilities, and Ji-hoon decided that he would let her into the game. He still wondered if a kid could be good at psychological warfare. And good she was. Everyone crowded around the girl's hand of cards in disbelief at how the girl was smiling throughout the entire game, including her win, making it hard to tell whether Chae-in had good or bad cards. Ji-hoon asked the girl how she was so good at this, and the little girl admitted that she had studied a bit of psychology while he was away in the military. Ji-hoon's grandmother handed over an envelope with all of the betted money, as it was rightfully hers, to which Chae-in said that she would use it to buy something delicious for everyone the next day. People tried to tell Chae-in that she should spend it on herself, but Chae-in insisted that she wanted to be kind. An elderly man in the room decided to give his own envelope of money for the girl to be able to use on herself, explaining that good things happen when a person has a kind heart, and telling the girl to always be that way. Chae-in agreed to be like that and thanked the old man, immediately showing off her earnings to her father as the two elderly people of the house stared happily at the sight. The holiday ended and the two found the time to finally be back home. Ji-hoon fell onto his bed, exhausted from everything that had happened, but glad to be back. He felt as though it was nice to eat lots of delicious food, but asked Chae-in if their house was the best. The little girl said that she had a different opinion, causing Ji-hoon to think that she meant the house in Daejeon. But it wasn't that either. Ji-hoon wanted to know where she was talking about, and felt as though he wanted to go with Chae-in to this unknown place. The girl thought for a moment and decided to keep it a secret until he guessed it correctly. Ji-hoon begged the girl for a hint, and Chae-in told him that it was a place she went to every day. He sat there and thought, frustrated that he couldn't think of the answer when he was told that it was really easy, and started to believe that it was only really easy from Chae-in's perspective. Ji-hoon had also asked his friends at school, however it seemed as though they knew the answer immediately, but they wouldn't tell him the answer and left him to himself. Ji-hoon's determination to figure out the answer didn't last long, because shortly after, a bombshell was dropped on the lab. Professor Choi explained that the president of the university demanded concrete results before he would allocate funding to the lab. People around the room started to give suggestions, but none of them gave a satisfactory answer. Ji-hoon raised his hand to suggest something related to self-driving cars, causing everyone in the room to excitedly agree with him, considering all the work they had done making it seem possible to be done. The professor decided to make Ji-hoon be in charge for the task, reassuring him that it would still be okay for him to do as a newcomer. He was still worried about the budget, but Professor Choi believed that the idea had potential for commercialization, making it likely to succeed in the end. Ji-hoon was reminded to believe in himself more, and he agreed that he would do his best to carry out the project. This autonomous car project had fortunately progressed smoothly, and telecommunication companies cooperated with the project. Thanks to the help of alumni, there was also a cooperative system with Shinsung Motors to be established, and Ji-hoon had focused on the primary goal of the project to make the car be able to park on its own. They had run tests with the car and were surprised at the early success of their attempts. Ji-hoon had chatted with the woman in the seat next to him, as he told her how he was planning on exploring a partnership with Shinsung, to which the woman found to be a good idea. He knew there would be concerns about reliability, but their results seemed to be significant enough to make a partnership possible, right? When talking with someone of Shinsung, Ji-hoon was told that it wouldn't work because their idea was already being carried out by the company's own research team. The man explained to Ji-hoon that things would become obsolete if they were to undertake the same tasks that their company's team was already doing, and apologized for all the hard work that Ji-hoon and his coworkers had already done. Ji-hoon said that it was fine and said that he understood, but that didn't mean he wasn't disappointed. After all the research being made a waste, Ji-hoon had went home to sleep while his daughter wondered if he was in a bad mood. He reassured her that he was fine and apologized for being so busy with work, but she understood. Ji-hoon was still grateful as always to have Chae-in and thanked her, telling her that they would play together the next day. Once he had fallen asleep, the little girl got up, knowing that her father was more disappointed than she thought about the project. She wondered what she had to do to help, whether it was about punishing a bad person again like Dong-ho or if it was something else. However, even if she was a dragon, Chae-in couldn't restrict human free will. She paced around the room in thought before finally an idea popped in her head. She grabbed her laptop with a smile, ready to work hard to solve the problem.